My wife's voice trembled as she said her parents were gravely ill and needed immediate help. That morning, I had a crucial meeting, one I'd been preparing for weeks. My daughter immediately offered, "I'll go with Mom, Dad. You focus on your work." I watched them drive away together, completely trusting that my family was doing something noble and necessary. But something kept gnawing at me, a feeling I couldn't shake, couldn't explain, couldn't ignore. So I made a decision that would change everything. I drove to my in-laws' house unannounced, bringing flowers and medicine. When I quietly opened that door and stepped inside, my heart seemed to stop beating. What I saw wasn't illness or emergency care. It was something far worse, beyond anything I could have imagined. I truly appreciate you taking a moment to be here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if the opening reminded you of something close to home. Subscribe and share if stories about family trust and hidden motives speak to you. This story blends fictional elements for reflection and learning, with names and settings adjusted, but the perspective may still be meaningful. The rain started just after dawn, not loud or dramatic, but steady enough to soften the world beyond our windows. A thin gray curtain blurred the trees along Oak Ridge Drive, turning everything outside into shapes without edges. I sat at the kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a warm mug, watching narrow trails of water slide down the glass. Betty moved through the kitchen with practiced ease. Coffee brewed, eggs cooked. Plates were set without a word needing to be spoken. After 24 years of marriage, we didn't have to talk to know the rhythm of a morning. Across from me, Charlotte scrolled through her phone, smiling quietly at something on the screen. Every now and then, she shook her head as if amused, then kept scrolling. It was ordinary, calm, familiar, the kind of morning you assume will repeat itself forever. "Dad," Charlotte said, finally looking up, "did you see that piece about the new waterfront development?" I glanced over the rim of my mug, the one near the old shipping yards. "Yeah, they're saying it could bring in thousands of jobs." I nodded. "The firm's been following it. If the funding lines up, we might bid on the accounting contract." Betty slid a plate of toast onto the table, her hand brushing my shoulder as she passed. "You've got that meeting today, right?" "The tech company." "Tech Vista," I said. "They're expanding fast. Need help keeping their finances organized as they scale." I checked the clock on the wall. Meeting's at 11. Charlotte nudged her eggs around with her fork. "I've got a deadline today, too. My boss keeps changing the timeline," and the sharp ring of Betty's phone cut her off. I watched my wife answer it. The change in her expression was immediate. "Mom," she said, her voice tightening. "What's going on?" The color drained from her face. One hand grabbed the counter for balance. "When did this start?" Panic edged into her words. "How high is his fever?" I stood up without realizing I'd moved. Charlotte set her phone down, concern mirroring her mother's. Okay, I'm coming now." Betty lowered the phone slowly, fingers trembling. She looked at me, eyes shining. "Stellan, it's Dad. His fever's at 103, and Mom's having chest pains. She says she can't breathe." My stomach dropped. Walter and Mildred were in their 80s. At that age, even small things could become serious fast. "I'm coming with you," I said, already reaching for my keys. "Number?" Betty shook her head. "You have that meeting. It's important. I'll drive to Salem, check on them, take them to the hospital if we need to." "Betty, your parents matter more than any meeting." "I'll go with Mom," Charlotte said, standing up and pulling her hair back. "Grandma and Grandpa need us. You handle your meeting, Dad. We've got this." I looked at my daughter, responsible, calm under pressure. I felt a rush of pride. "You sure?" I asked. Betty was already grabbing her purse. "We are. You've worked hard for this opportunity. We'll call as soon as we get there." Charlotte slipped on her jacket. "Don't worry. We'll take care of them." I pulled them both into a hug. Betty smelled like lavender, the same perfume she'd worn for decades. Charlotte squeezed my hand tightly. "Call me the moment you arrive," I said. "If they need the hospital, I'm leaving immediately." "We will," Betty said, kissing my cheek. "I love you." "Love you too, Dad," Charlotte said as she headed for the door. I stood in the doorway and watched Betty's silver sedan pull away taillights fading into the rain. The house felt wrong the moment they were gone. I returned to the kitchen and poured myself another cup of coffee. The eggs on my plate had gone cold. Charlotte's charger still hung from the outlet. Betty's reading glasses rested beside her unfinished crossword. I opened my calendar, the Tech Vista meeting. A follow-up call later that afternoon. Dinner with the Johnsons this weekend likely canceled if things with Walter and Mildred worsened. And yet something unsettled me. I couldn't name it. No clear reason. Just a quiet pressure in my chest. Maybe it was how fast Betty had grabbed her purse. Maybe how quickly Charlotte volunteered to go. Or maybe it was instinct, the kind that whispers when the people you love are involved. I walked into the living room and stopped in front of the mantel. Our wedding photo, Charlotte's college graduation, a beach trip at Cannon Beach, all three of us laughing into the wind. 24 years of marriage, a life built carefully, a daughter raised with love, in-laws who'd welcomed me from the beginning. Everything I thought I wanted was there. So why did it feel like I was standing at the edge of something dark? I checked the time. 10:15. 45 minutes until my meeting. I should have been reviewing notes. Instead, I grabbed my jacket. I told myself I was overthinking, that nothing was wrong, that they were handling a family emergency and I was letting anxiety run wild. Still, I picked up my keys. I'd stop for flowers. White lilies, Mildred's favorite. Maybe grab medicine at the pharmacy. Then I'd drive to Salem myself, just to make sure everything was okay. Work could wait. Family came first. 20 minutes later, I pulled out of the driveway. The rain had picked up, drumming against the windshield. The bouquet sat on the passenger seat beside a small pharmacy bag. I didn't know it then, but I was driving toward the end of my marriage, the end of my trust, the end of the man I'd been for 56 years. 2 hours later, I would stand at Walter and Mildred's front door with flowers in my hand and watch my world collapse. But in that moment, with the radio humming softly and rain streaking the glass, I still believed the story I'd been told. I still believed in the family I thought I had. I'd been driving for 45 minutes, the windshield wipers keeping rhythm with my thoughts, as rain continued to fall across Interstate 5. The highway stretched south through gray landscape farmland and scattered trees blurring past my windows. I kept thinking about Mildred and Walter. They'd been part of my life for 24 years, since the day I'd nervously asked Walter's permission to marry his daughter. He'd looked at me over his reading glasses, stern, for exactly 3 seconds before breaking into a smile and shaking my hand so hard I thought my arm might fall off. Welcome to the family, son. That's what he'd called me, son. Mildred had been just as welcoming. Every Thanksgiving she'd make her famous apple pie specifically because she knew it was my favorite. Every Christmas she'd slip me an extra piece of fudge when Betty wasn't looking, with a conspiratorial wink. Good people, kind people. And now at 80 and 78 years old, they were facing serious illness. Maybe worse. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Walter was 80. At that age, any illness could turn critical fast. A high fever could become pneumonia. Chest pains could mean... Yes, I didn't want to think about it. I'd stopped at a small grocery store about 10 miles back, picked up a bouquet of white lilies, Mildred's favorite. Then I'd swung by a pharmacy, grabbed fever reducers, pain medication, anything that might help, until they could get proper medical attention. The pharmacist had given me a sympathetic look when I'd explained the situation. Hope they feel better soon? Thank you, me too. Now as I took the exit for Salem, the rain seemed to intensify. The sky was the color of old steel, heavy with clouds that promised the weather wasn't going to improve anytime soon. I navigated through familiar streets. Betty and I had made this drive countless times over the years. Birthday parties, holiday gatherings, random Sunday visits just because. I knew every turn, every stoplight. Sycamore Street appeared on my right. I turned, drove 3 blocks, and there it was. 847 Sycamore Street. A modest single-story house with cream-colored siding and dark green shutters. A small, neatly maintained lawn stretched to the sidewalk. Walter's old pickup truck sat in the driveway, and the front gate was standing wide open. My foot eased off the gas pedal. That wasn't right. Walter and Mildred always kept that gate closed. Always. Walter had installed it himself 15 years ago, after a neighbor's dog had gotten into their yard and dug up Mildred's rose bushes. He was religious about keeping it latched, but today it stood open, swinging slightly in the breeze. I pulled past the house and parked about 30 yards down the street next to a large oak tree. Some instinct I couldn't name told me not to park right in front, not to announce my arrival. I sat there for a moment, engine running, wipers still going. Through the rain-streaked windshield, I could see the house clearly. Lights were on inside. No signs of distress, no ambulance, no frantic activity that you'd expect if 2 elderly people were seriously ill. I turned off the engine, grabbed the flowers and the pharmacy bag, opened the car door, and stepped into the rain. The walk to the house felt longer than it should have. Each step seemed to echo too loud against the wet pavement. My shoes squelched softly on the damp grass as I crossed the yard. That's when I heard it. A television, playing clearly enough that I could make out the enthusiastic voice of a game show host, followed by audience laughter and applause. I stopped walking. Sick people didn't watch game shows. People with 103-degree fevers and severe chest pains didn't sit around watching television. They were in bed, in pain, maybe on their way to the emergency room, but not watching game shows. My heart started beating faster. I moved closer to the house, staying quiet. The front door was slightly ajar, just a crack, but enough that I could see into the dim hallway beyond. I reached out, pushed the door open a few more inches. It moved silently on well-oiled hinges. The interior of the house looked normal. Mildred's collection of ceramic figurines lined the shelf in the hallway. Walter's jacket hung on the coat rack. The familiar smell of the house, a mixture of old wood vanilla candles and the faint scent of the lavender sachets Mildred kept everywhere wrapped around me. I stepped inside, moving as quietly as I could. Set the flowers in the pharmacy bag down on the small table near the entrance. My hands were shaking slightly, though. I couldn't have said exactly why. The television was louder now. I could hear it clearly from what I knew was the living room just down the hall and to the right. And underneath the TV noise, I could hear voices. Talking, not moaning in pain, not crying out for help. Just talking, normally, casually. I moved down the hallway, my heart pounding so hard, I was sure everyone in the house could hear it. Each footstep felt like thunder, even though I was walking on carpet. The living room doorway was ahead of me on the right. The voices were clearer now. One of them was Walter's distinctive baritone, slightly raspy with age. The other was Mildred's softer tone. I reached the doorway, looked inside, and my entire world tilted sideways. Mildred was sitting on the sofa, a plate of cookies on her lap, watching the television with obvious enjoyment. She was wearing her favorite purple cardigan, the one she always wore when she was comfortable and happy. No sign of chest pains, no difficulty breathing. She reached for another cookie, took a bite, and laughed at something on the screen. Walter sat in his recliner, his kingdom as he called it, with the morning newspaper spread across his lap. Reading glasses perched on his nose. No fever, no illness. He looked up at the TV, chuckled at whatever joke had just been made, then went back to his paper. Both of them were perfectly, completely, undeniably healthy. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Betty had lied to me. The words kept repeating in my mind over and over. Betty had lied to me. There was no emergency, no sick parents, no crisis that required her and Charlotte to drop everything and drive to Salem. So why were they here? As if answering my unspoken question, I heard Betty's voice drift from somewhere deeper in the house, from the direction of the kitchen. "All needs to move faster," she was saying. "We can't keep waiting." Then Charlotte's voice, "I know, Mom, but we have to be careful. If he finds out before we're ready, he won't." Betty's tone was firm, certain. "Stellan trusts us completely. He always has." My legs felt weak. They weren't talking about medicine. They weren't discussing doctor's appointments or hospital visits or any kind of medical care. They were talking about money, my money, and they were talking about me. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and started recording. I needed proof. I needed to know this nightmare was real. My fingers fumbled with the screen. The recording app icon seemed impossibly small, my hands shaking so badly I could barely tap it. Finally, the red dot appeared. Recording. I held the phone up, moving as quietly as I could toward the kitchen doorway. Each step felt dangerous, like walking through a minefield. One creak of the floorboards, one shadow falling wrong, and they'd know I was here. I pressed myself against the wall just outside the kitchen entrance, close enough to hear every word, hidden enough that they couldn't see me. My heart hammered so loud I was certain they'd hear it. Betty's voice came through clearly. "Did you transfer the $3,000 this week?" "Done this morning, Mom." Charlotte sounded casual, like she was discussing grocery shopping. "Dad never checks the statements anyway." $3,000 this week, meaning this wasn't the first time. "What's the total now?" Betty asked. A pause. Then Charlotte, $234,000. Just a few more months and we'll have enough. The number hit me like a physical blow. $234,000. Nearly $250,000 gone, stolen, by my wife and daughter. My vision blurred. I pressed harder against the wall, needing something solid to keep me upright. "Are you sure he won't notice?" Betty's voice carried a hint of worry. Charlotte laughed. Actually laughed. "Mom, Dad's a financial advisor, but he's so busy with his clients that he never looks at his own accounts. It's actually kind of funny when you think about it." Funny. She thought destroying me was funny. "Sometimes I still feel guilty," Betty began. "Don't!" Charlotte cut her off, voice turning cold. "He's ignored our emotional needs for years. You deserve this. We both deserve this." Each word was a knife. Each sentence carved something away from me that I'd never get back. I'd ignored their emotional needs. I thought about every birthday party I'd thrown for Charlotte, every dance recital I'd attended, every parent-teacher conference, every late night helping her with homework, teaching her to drive, being there when she got her heart broken the first time. I thought about Betty, 24 years of marriage, 24 years of working hard to provide for our family, of building a life together, of thinking we were happy. Had I missed something? Had I been blind to their unhappiness? Or was this just the story they'd told themselves to justify what they were doing? The transfers have been smooth, Charlotte continued. I've been spreading them across 3 different accounts. Even if he did check which he won't, it would just look like normal spending patterns. You've been so smart about this, honey. I learned from the best, Mom. They sounded proud, like they were discussing a successful business venture, not the systematic destruction of my life. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe properly. The hallway seemed to tilt, walls closing in. This can't be real. This is my family. I wanted to burst into that kitchen, wanted to slam my phone down on the table and demand answers, wanted to see their faces when they realized I knew everything. But something held me back. I needed more than this. I needed to understand the full scope of what they'd done. How long had this been going on? What were they planning to do with the money? Was it just the 2 of them, or a male voice from the living room? Everything set. I froze. A man. There was a man in this house. A man whose voice I didn't recognize. Almost done, Betty called back. Stellan still doesn't suspect anything. The man laughed, deep, confident, casual. Perfect. My blood turned to ice. Who was he? Why was he here? And why did Betty sound so comfortable talking to him? We should probably head out soon, the man continued. Don't want to risk him actually showing up. He won't, Charlotte said. He's at that meeting with Tech Vista. He'll be there for hours. They'd planned this, timed it, made sure I'd be safely occupied while they gathered here to discuss how they were robbing me blind. The man said something else too quiet for me to hear clearly. Betty responded with a laugh I recognized, intimate and familiar, the laugh she used to save just for me. I had to see him, had to know who this person was who'd become part of my family's conspiracy against me. I moved carefully toward the living room doorway and looked inside. What I saw made my blood run cold. My hands steadied on the phone, still recording, as I inched closer to where I could see into the living room without being seen myself. The angle was awkward, forcing me to lean against the doorframe, but I had a clear view. A man sat on the sofa, early 30s maybe, athletic build, well-dressed in dark jeans and a fitted sweater. Handsome in that casual, confident way that probably made him used to getting what he wanted. He sat close to Betty, too close. His hand rested on the armrest between them, but his fingers brushed against her arm in a way that made my stomach turn. Betty didn't pull away. She laughed at something he said. Her body language relaxed, comfortable. She's having an affair. The thought hit me like a sledgehammer. 24 years of marriage and my wife was having an affair with a man young enough to be her son. But then Charlotte walked in from the kitchen. She carried 2 coffee mugs, moving with easy familiarity through the space. She handed one to Betty, then walked around the coffee table to give the other to the man. Thanks, sweetheart, he said, taking the mug. The word sweetheart hung in the air. The man stood up, moved toward Charlotte. His hand touched her arm, lingering intimate. Charlotte smiled at him, that same comfortable smile she used to give her high school boyfriend when she thought I wasn't watching. Wait, my mind struggled to process what I was seeing. Was this man involved with Betty or Charlotte? I watched frozen as the man settled back onto the sofa. But this time he positioned himself between both women, Betty on his left, Charlotte on his right. He talked to both of them, gesturing as he spoke, but his body language toward Charlotte was different, more intimate, the way he looked at her. The way his hand found reasons to touch her shoulder, her hand, her knee. And Betty, my wife, either didn't notice or didn't care. What the hell was happening here? My phone was still in my hand, still recording audio. I switched to the camera, put it on silent mode, and started taking pictures. Zoom in, the man's face clear enough to identify him. Click. The man sitting with Betty, his hand on her arm. Click. The man leaning close to Charlotte, their heads nearly touching. Click. Through the window visible in the background, a car parked in the driveway I hadn't noticed before. Dark blue sedan. I zoomed in on the license plate. Oregon, HKR 2947. Click. I needed to know who this person was. Needed to understand what role he played in whatever conspiracy was unfolding in my life. The man laughed at something Charlotte said. You're brilliant. You know that Stellan never saw any of this coming. Stellan. My name in his mouth sounded like mockery. He's too trusting, Betty said. Always has been. Makes things easier for us. Us, the three of them, a unit, a team. Working against me? How much longer? The man asked. Few more months, Charlotte replied. Then we can make the final move. The final move. What did that mean? I took one more photo of the three of them together, a perfect shot that captured their comfortable conspiracy, then carefully backed away from the doorway. My heart pounded so hard I was sure they'd hear it. Each step backward felt dangerous, like I was defusing a bomb that could explode if I made one wrong move. I reached the front hallway. The flowers and medicine I'd brought sat on the entry table, mocking me with their useless optimism. I picked them up, couldn't leave evidence I'd been here, and moved to the front door. It was still slightly ajar exactly as I'd found it. I slipped through, pulled it closed with barely a whisper of sound, then walked quickly across the wet lawn toward my car. The rain had picked up, coming down harder now. By the time I reached my car and got inside, I was soaked. I sat behind the wheel, not starting the engine, just sitting, staring. I pulled up the photos on my phone. The man's face filled the screen. Handsome, confident, smiling. Who are you? I swiped to the next photo. Him with Betty, then him with Charlotte, then the license plate. HKR 947. I could track that, find out who owned the car, get a name. But what then? Rain drummed on the roof of the car, a steady percussion that matched the chaos in my head. I watched the house through the rain-streaked windshield, the lights glowing warm in the windows. My wife and daughter inside with a stranger, planning something that would destroy me. $234,000, already gone. And they weren't done yet. A few more months, then we can make the final move. What was the final move? What else did they have planned? I looked at the photos again. The man's face. His comfortable intimacy with both my wife and daughter. The way they'd formed a triangle of conspiracy. And suddenly I understood something that made my blood run even colder. This wasn't just about money. This was bigger, darker, more calculated than simple theft. They were planning something that would go beyond stealing my money. Something that required months more of preparation. Something they seemed confident I would never recover from. I sat in that car for 20 minutes, rain pounding on the metal above me, staring at the face of a stranger on my phone screen. My wife, my daughter, a man I'd never seen before, and a conspiracy larger and darker than anything I could have imagined. I drove home in a state of numbness. When I opened my laptop to check the bank accounts, my worst fears were confirmed. The highway stretched endlessly before me. Rain had stopped leaving wet pavement that reflected gray sky. I didn't remember the drive. My hands gripped the wheel, my foot worked the pedals, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. Betty's laugh, Charlotte's cold voice, that stranger's confident smile, $234,000. By 3 o'clock, I was pulling into my driveway. The house looked peaceful, ordinary. Nothing had changed on the outside. Everything had changed on the inside. I unlocked the door and stepped into silence. No one home, just empty rooms holding secrets I'd been too blind to see. I went straight to my office, closed the door, and sat at my desk. My laptop sat waiting. I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Please let this be wrong. Please. But I already knew it wasn't. I logged into our U.S. bank account, the joint checking Betty and I had shared for 24 years. Set the date range to 18 months and clicked search. The screen loaded. There it was. Every single week like clockwork. Electronic transfer, $3,000. Tuesday one week, Thursday the next, but always there, week after week after week. Destination investment account, Cayman Islands. I'd never authorized any account in the Cayman Islands. I did the math even though I knew the answer. 3,000 times, 4 weeks times 18 months. $216,000. I scrolled deeper, found the anomalies. Larger transfers scattered throughout. 5,000 here, 8,000 there, another 3,000. Total $234,000. Exactly what Charlotte had said. My chest tightened. I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, water dripped from trees. A neighbor walked a dog. Normal life, continuing while mine collapsed. I'd worked 60-hour weeks for this money, skipped vacations, missed dance recitals because of client deadlines. Told myself it was worth it because I was providing for my family. For what? To fund my own destruction? I pulled out my phone and found the name I needed. Benjamin Clark, college roommate. Now, one of Portland's top divorce attorneys. 2 rings. It's Stellan Longtime. What's going on? His voice was warm, friendly. We hadn't talked in months. Ben, I need help. It's urgent. Everything in my tone changed his demeanor instantly. Come to my office right now. 30 minutes. I'll be waiting. I hung up and immediately dialed again. Philip Benson, my accountant for 10 years. Meticulous, thorough, trustworthy. Stellan, what can I do for you? Philip, I need every financial record, every account, every transaction, every document. 3 years back. A pause. Philip was smart enough to understand what I wasn't saying. Is everything all right? No, but it will be. How fast can you get it? I'll pull everything tonight. Tomorrow morning? Perfect, thank you. I set the phone down and took a breath. The pieces were moving into place. Legal representation, financial documentation, evidence. This was real. This was happening. I looked at the computer screen again. All those transfers marching away with my life's work. Each one represented hours away from home. Clients I'd helped. Trust I'd built. Trust. I'd built a career helping people protect their money, and I'd been too busy to notice my own family stealing mine. Dad's so busy with his clients that he never looks at his own accounts. Charlotte had been right. She'd studied me, understood my blind spots, and exploited them perfectly. My phone buzzed. Betty. A text message. How did your meeting go? Hope it went well. Love you. Love you. I stared at those words until they meant nothing. Then the phone rang. Betty calling. Her contact photo smiled up at me last summer, at Cannon Beach sunset, behind us her telling me how lucky she felt. She couldn't know I knew. Not yet. Not until everything was in place. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. My finger hovered over the answer button, but I couldn't. Not yet. Not before I understood everything. Not before I had a plan. I let it go to voicemail. Guilt twisted inside me 24 years of being the husband who always answered, who was always there. But that husband had been a fool. That husband had trusted while they robbed him blind. I couldn't be that husband anymore. Another buzz, voicemail notification. I didn't listen. Instead, I grabbed my keys, my laptop, and the printed bank statements. 30 minutes to Benjamin's office. I needed to move. As I locked the front door, my phone buzzed again. Betty, everything okay? You didn't answer. I typed back with steady hands. Sorry in the car. Meeting ran late. Heading to another client. Talk tonight. Love you. The lie came easier than expected. I got in my car and drove toward downtown Portland, toward Benjamin's office, toward whatever came next. Behind me, the house stood empty, holding secrets I'd been too blind to see. But I wasn't blind anymore. Benjamin listened to the recording in absolute silence. When it ended, he looked at me with a mix of pity and cold fury. His office occupied the 20th floor of a downtown Portland high-rise. Glass walls offered a view of the city spread below us, lights beginning to flicker on as evening approached. Modern furniture law books lining one wall, and a desk that probably cost more than most people's cars. I'd driven here in a daze, the recording burning in my phone, like evidence of a crime I still couldn't fully accept, was real. Benjamin had cleared his schedule like he'd promised. Now he sat across from me, his expression growing darker with every word from the recording. Betty's voice? Did you transfer the $3,000 this week? Charlotte's reply? Done this morning, Mom. 5 minutes of my family casually discussing how they'd stolen from me. When it finally ended, silence filled the office. Stellan! Benjamin's voice was controlled, professional, but I could hear the anger underneath. This is fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. This isn't just a bad marriage. This is criminal. I showed him the photos next. The man on my phone screen sitting between my wife and daughter, comfortable and confident. We need to identify him, Benjamin said immediately. I'm recommending we hire a private investigator, Beverly Quinn. She's the best in Portland. Whatever it takes. He nodded, already making notes. Here's what we're going to do. You don't confront them. Not yet. We build an ironclad case, first financial record surveillance evidence of every transaction. If you confront them now, they'll destroy evidence. They'll lawyer up. We'll lose our advantage. So I just pretend, act like everything's normal. Exactly. His eyes met mine. I know it's hard, but we strike when we're ready, not before. The drive home felt longer than it should have. I kept checking the clock. Philip would arrive at 8:30 with the financial records. By the time I pulled into my driveway, darkness had fully settled. I sat in the car for a moment, gathering myself, then went inside. Philip arrived exactly on time. In my home office, he spread documents across my desk, a thick stack of papers that represented 3 years of my financial life. Stellan, you need to see this. His voice was grave. He showed me the first document, a mortgage on our house. $120,000, dated 1 year ago. I never took out a mortgage, I said. Someone did. Look at the signature. I looked. It was supposed to be mine, but the handwriting was slightly off. Close, but not quite right. That's not my signature. I thought as much. Philip pulled out another document. And this, your life insurance policy. 6 months ago, the beneficiary was changed. I stared at the paper. Where Betty's name should have been, I saw Charlotte's name instead. I never authorized this change. Someone did. Someone with access to your personal information, your signature, your accounts. My hands went cold. They're planning something worse than theft. It appears that way. Philip's expression was grim. I'll have a complete analysis by the weekend, but Stellan, you need to be very careful. The sound of the front door opening made us both freeze. Dad, we're home. Charlotte's voice, bright and cheerful, echoed through the house. I looked at Philip. He quickly gathered the documents, tucked them into his briefcase. Act normal, he whispered. I'll let myself out the back. I took a breath that forced my face into something resembling a smile and walked out of my office. Charlotte stood in the hallway, her face lit with what looked like genuine happiness. She rushed forward and hugged me. Grandma and Grandpa are doing so much better. I hugged her back, feeling my heart crack. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Betty appeared behind her, tired but smiling. She kissed my cheek. Thank you for being so understanding about us leaving suddenly. Of course, I'm just glad they're okay. The lies came so easily now. Let me order pizza. It's late for dinner. Perfect. Betty squeezed my hand. I'm exhausted. 20 minutes later, we sat around the kitchen table with pizza boxes open between us. A normal family having a normal dinner. Charlotte talked about work stress. Betty mentioned maybe visiting her parents again next week. I nodded, smiled, asked questions, played the role of concerned father and devoted husband. Inside, I was dying. Every word Charlotte spoke, I heard her voice from the recording. Dad never checks his accounts. It's actually kind of funny. Every time Betty touched my hand, I felt that stranger's hand on her arm in her parents' living room. But I smiled. I laughed at Charlotte's jokes. I kissed Betty's forehead when she yawned and said she was heading to bed early. I'll be up soon, I told her. Just want to finish some work emails. She went upstairs. Charlotte followed shortly after calling goodnight from her room. I sat alone in the kitchen, surrounded by empty pizza boxes and the wreckage of my life. Later, I lay in bed beside my wife, listening to her peaceful breathing. She fell asleep easily without guilt. I stared at the ceiling, mind spinning with evidence and plans. The beneficiary change, the forged signatures, the hidden accounts, the mysterious man. $234,000 already gone. Tomorrow I'd call Beverly Quinn. Tomorrow the real investigation would begin. Over the next week I became an actor in my own life. Every smile was rehearsed. Every I love you tasted like ash. Friday morning, day 1. I sat across from Beverly Quinn in her office on the east side of Portland. Modest space filing cabinets lining the walls, computer screens, showing surveillance footage from other cases. Professional, efficient, exactly what I needed. Beverly was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that made you feel like she saw everything you were trying to hide. Tell me everything, she said. I showed her the photos, the recording, the license plate number HKR2947. She studied each piece of evidence, carefully taking notes. I'll find out who he is, where he goes, who he's really with. I need everything, no matter how much it hurts. You'll have answers within a week. She looked at me directly. But Stellan, be prepared. The truth is rarely kind. I already knew that. The drive home felt surreal. I was about to spend the next week pretending nothing had changed while a stranger investigated my family's betrayal. That weekend began the torture. Saturday morning, I made breakfast. Betty came downstairs in her robe, kissed my cheek, told me the eggs were perfect. I smiled, kissed her back, tasted nothing but lies. Charlotte joined us, cheerful and bright. Dad, this is amazing. You're the best. Anything for my girls. The words came automatically hollow. At work, I couldn't concentrate. Clients asked questions I had to ask them to repeat. Numbers blurred on spreadsheets. My assistant knocked on my door Tuesday afternoon. Mr. Turner, are you feeling all right? You seem distracted. Just a lot on my mind. I'm fine. But I wasn't fine. Every evening I came home to family dinners. Betty would talk about her day visiting friends, running errands, helping her parents. All of it probably lies. Charlotte would share excitement about work projects and marketing campaigns. The new campaign is launching next week. Dad, I think it's going to be huge. That's wonderful, sweetheart. You've worked so hard. I wanted to scream, wanted to flip the table and demand the truth. Instead, I smiled and asked follow-up questions like a good father. Betty noticed something was wrong by Wednesday. Honey, you look exhausted. Is everything okay? Busy season, you know how it gets. Maybe you should take a day off. I will, soon. Another lie to add to the pile. The nights were worst. Lying next to Betty in the dark, listening to her peaceful breathing, while my mind spun with evidence and questions. She slept easily without guilt. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. Thursday night, I broke down in my home office. Sat alone in the dark head in my hands. 24 years of marriage, a daughter I'd raised from birth. Had any of it been real? My phone rang. Beverly. Stellan, I've identified him. Ryan Cross, 32 years old, personal trainer at Equinox Gym in the Pearl District. Lives in a luxury apartment nearby. My hands went cold. Is he with my wife? I'm still confirming details. Give me more time. 2 days later, day 5, she called again. Stellan, I've been following Ryan for 5 days now. And he meets with Charlotte every single day. Coffee shops, his apartment, restaurants. They're clearly involved. I felt sick. What about Betty? He's met with Betty twice. Both times Charlotte was present. But the body language... Beverly paused. He's not with Betty, Stellan. The intimacy, the way he looks at her, touches her, that's all directed at Charlotte. The words took a moment to land. You're saying, Ryan is your daughter's boyfriend, not your wife's. I sat down heavily. The room tilted. Charlotte was the mastermind, not Betty. My daughter, my little girl, was manipulating her own mother, using her, and Betty either didn't see it or didn't care. I remembered the life insurance documents, the beneficiary change, Charlotte's name replacing Betty's. She's planning something, I said quietly. Something worse than theft. Stellan, there's more. My grip tightened on the phone. What? I've been monitoring online activity. Charlotte's been searching for information about substances that don't leave traces. And I checked your car's maintenance records. Someone tampered with your brake system 3 weeks ago. The world stopped. What are you saying? Beverly's voice was steady but grave. I'm saying your daughter may be planning to harm you. 3 days passed in uneasy silence. I still went through the motions, work, home, family dinners, but I watched Charlotte carefully. Then on day 10, someone tried to end my life. Wednesday afternoon, 5:45. I left my office building and walked to the parking garage, briefcase in hand, mind occupied with client files and Beverly's latest report. The rain had started again, Portland's constant companion. I got in my car, started the engine, and merged onto Interstate 5 southbound toward home. Traffic was moderate, rush hour but not terrible. Rain made the pavement slick, headlights reflecting off wet asphalt. I stayed in the middle lane, cruise control set to 65. 15 minutes into the drive, the car ahead of me braked suddenly. I pressed the brake pedal. Nothing happened. The pedal went straight to the floor. No resistance. No slowing. My car kept rolling forward, momentum carrying me toward the stopped vehicle ahead. No. I pumped the brake. Nothing. Pressed harder. The pedal hit the floor with each push, useless. Ahead of me, concrete barriers. Behind me, cars approaching fast. To my left, a semi-truck barreling down the highway. I yanked the wheel hard right. The car slid across lanes. Tires screamed. A horn blared, the truck missing me by inches. I felt the air displacement as it roared past. More horns, shouting. My car skidding sideways across 2 lanes. I pulled the emergency brake, grabbed it hard and held on. The car shuddered, fish-tailed, but finally began to slow. I guided it to the shoulder, fighting for control. Gravel crunched under tires. The car lurched, bounced, and came to a stop. I sat there, hands locked on the wheel, heart hammering so hard I thought my ribs would crack. Vision blurred at the edges. Cars rushed past. Some honked. Most ignored me. A knock on my window made me jump. "Sir, you okay?" A man in a rain jacket, concerned face pressed against the glass. I nodded, couldn't speak, rolled down the window. "You all right? That was close." "Brakes failed." My voice sounded distant. Need a tow truck." "You want me to call someone?" "I've got it, thank you." He hesitated, then walked back to his car. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called for a tow. 30 minutes later, my car was being loaded onto a flatbed. The driver recommended a repair shop nearby. I rode with him, still trembling. At the shop, a mechanic crawled under my car while I waited in the office drinking terrible coffee and trying to stop my hands from shaking. 20 minutes passed. The mechanic emerged wiping his hands on a rag. His expression was grave. "Mr. Turner, your brake lines were cut, deliberately." The coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. "What?" "Someone tampered with your vehicle. Look." He pulled up photos on his phone. "These are clean cuts, not wear and tear. Someone wanted your brakes to fail." I stared at the images. Clean slices through the brake lines. Precise. Intentional. "This is sabotage, sir. You need to report this to police." I called from the shop. An officer arrived within the hour, took my statement, photographed the brake lines, and filed a report. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" he asked, pen poised over his notepad. I thought about Charlotte, about Beverly's discoveries, about brake tampering 3 weeks ago that had finally manifested today. "No," I lied. "Any security cameras at your home?" "No." I realized how vulnerable I was. No cameras, no protection, living with someone who wanted me dead. "Be careful, Mr. Turner. Whoever did this, they meant for you to have an accident." He gave me a case number and left. By 8:30, I was in an Uber heading home. My car would be in the shop for days. I'd have to rent something tomorrow. I walked through the front door to find Betty and Charlotte on the couch watching television. Charlotte jumped up immediately. "Dad, we heard about the car. Are you okay?" She rushed over and hugged me tight. I stood rigid, studying her face over her shoulder. Was that genuine concern, or was she disappointed I was still alive? "What happened?" Betty stood face worried. "Brake failure. I'm fine, just shaken up." "Oh my God, Stellan." Betty's hand flew to her mouth. "You could have been killed." "Dad, that's terrifying." Charlotte pulled back, looking up at me with wide eyes. "You could have died." I met her gaze directly. "I know, sweetheart." Behind those concerned eyes, what was she really thinking? Had she hoped I wouldn't come home tonight? Had she been waiting for a phone call from the police telling her I was dead? "I'm just glad you're safe." Betty hugged me. "That's all that matters." I returned the hug mechanically. Safe. I wasn't safe. Not in this house. Not with these people. We ate a late dinner. They fussed over me, asked questions, expressed relief and concern in all the right places. I watched Charlotte carefully. Every expression, every word, searching for cracks in the performance. But she was good. Very good. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Betty slept peacefully beside me. The house settled around us, creaking boards, groaning pipes, the hum of the refrigerator downstairs. Every sound made me flinch. Somewhere in this house, the person who'd tried to kill me was sleeping soundly. At 2 in the morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and went to the bathroom, closed the door, and called Beverly. She answered on the second ring. "Stellan, we need to move faster," I whispered, "before she tries again." 3 days after the brake incident, Beverly called with information that made everything clearer and infinitely darker. Saturday morning. Day 13 since I'd discovered the truth. I sat across from Beverly in a quiet coffee shop on the east side, away from anyone who might recognize me. She slid a thick folder across the table. "Ryan Cross, here's what I found." I opened it. The first page showed his driver's license photo. That confident smile, those eyes that had looked at my daughter with calculated interest. 32 years old, personal trainer at Equinox in the Pearl District. Annual salary approximately $45,000. Rents an apartment for $2,800 a month. I did the math quickly. That's most of his income just on rent. Exactly. Beverly pulled out more photos. But look at what he drives. A Mercedes, dark blue, the same one I'd photographed outside Walter and Mildred's house. I looked up the model, later $65,000. And his clothes. More photos, designer labels, expensive watches. This isn't a $45,000 lifestyle, Stellan. Where's the money coming from? From Charlotte, from your accounts. She showed me surveillance photos next. Ryan and Charlotte outside a restaurant, his arm around her waist. Ryan and Charlotte entering his apartment building, her hand in his. A kiss on a street corner that made my stomach turn. Then photos of Ryan with Betty, coffee shops, casual conversations. But the body language was completely different. Professional, distant, no touching. Charlotte thinks Ryan loves her. Betty thinks the same thing. But Ryan only loves money. The words settled over me like ice. Monday afternoon, my phone rang. Philip. "Stellan, sit down." I was already sitting at my desk, but his tone made me brace myself. "I've completed the full analysis. What I found?" He paused. "It's worse than we thought." "Tell me." 8 months ago, There was a $50,000 transfer from your investment account. The memo line says, Investment, Ryan's Gym Startup. What gym? Exactly. There is no gym, no business registration, no LLC formation, nothing. The money went directly into Ryan's personal account. $50,000 gone for a business that never existed. The mortgage on your house, the $120,000 one, I traced where the money went. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The signature is yours, but Daliand and Buesan Muscat. It's not, it's forged. I suspected as much. And Stellan, there's one more thing, your life insurance policy. I already knew where this was going, but I let him continue. $1 million. 6 months ago, the beneficiary was changed from Betty to Charlotte. The authorization signature is supposed to be yours. I never signed that. I know, but if you were to pass away, Charlotte would receive $1 million. My blood ran cold, the brake lines, the failed attempt. She needed me gone. Philip, thank you. Send me everything in writing. Already done. Stellan, be careful. Wednesday evening, day 17. I came home early, told Betty I had a headache, and went upstairs to lie down. But I didn't go to the bedroom. I went to my office and closed the door quietly. Charlotte was in her room. I could hear her voice through the wall. She was on the phone. I moved into the hallway, standing just outside her door. Mom thinks you're her boyfriend, Ryan. Charlotte's voice carried clearly. A male voice on speakerphone. Ryan. Let her think that. We need her cooperation. But what about Dad? When is it going to happen? My heart stopped. Be patient, babe. The first attempt didn't work, but there are other ways. I can't wait much longer. I need that insurance money. Soon, very soon, I promise. I stood frozen in the hallway. Every word was a knife. They were planning to kill me. My daughter and her boyfriend were actively planning my death so they could collect $1 million. And Betty, my wife, was just a pawn. She thought Ryan cared about her. Had no idea he was using her, manipulating her, keeping her compliant while he and Charlotte plotted murder. I backed away from the door silently, down the stairs, into my office, locked the door, sat at my desk with my head in my hands. 24 years of marriage, a daughter I'd loved from the moment she was born, and it had all led to this sitting in my own home, listening to my child discuss the best way to end my life. I picked up my phone and called Benjamin. We need to move faster, I said, voice shaking. They're planning a second attempt. This time, they might succeed. Benjamin's response was cold, controlled. Then we strike first. Tomorrow we accelerate everything. 2 days after overhearing Charlotte's phone call on a quiet Sunday morning, the second attempt came. It was more direct. And it almost succeeded. Sunday, 9 in the morning. I sat in the living room with the newspaper spread across my lap, trying to maintain the appearance of normalcy, even though every nerve in my body was on alert. Footsteps on the stairs. Charlotte came down, already dressed, her face bright with a smile. Good morning, Dad. Want some coffee? I'm making your favorite. I looked up from the paper. My favorite. Caramel latte, with an extra shot of espresso. She only made that on special occasions. That would be great, sweetheart. She disappeared into the kitchen. I heard the espresso machine hissing the clink of mugs. 10 minutes later, she returned carrying a large ceramic cup. Extra shot, just how you like it. She set it on the coffee table in front of me with a smile that looked completely genuine. Thank you, Charlotte. She settled onto the couch beside me, picking up her phone, but not really looking at it, watching me instead in her peripheral vision. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup. Steam rose from the surface. It smelled perfect, rich coffee, sweet caramel, exactly the way I'd always liked it. Is this it? Is this the moment? But I couldn't show fear, couldn't let her know I suspected anything. I took a sip. It tasted normal, sweet, strong, exactly right. I took another sip, then another. Over the next 20 minutes, I drank half the cup while reading the sports section and occasionally commenting on articles to Charlotte. She responded appropriately, laughed at the right moments, asked questions. The perfect daughter spending a quiet Sunday morning with her father. 9:45. The room tilted. I gripped the armrest of the chair. The newspaper slid from my lap. Dad, Charlotte's voice sounded distant. You okay? My heart was racing, pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The room spun like I was on a carnival ride. I don't feel right. I tried to stand. My legs buckled. I went down hard, hitting the floor with my shoulder. The impact barely registered through the chaos in my head. Couldn't breathe. My chest was tight, constricting, vision blurring at the edges. Then Dad, Mom. Betty's footsteps thundered down the stairs. Stellan. I tried to respond but couldn't form words. The ceiling swam above me. Charlotte's face appeared hovering over mine, her expression perfectly crafted concern. Call 911. Her voice sharp, panicked. Mom, call them now. Betty's voice from somewhere far away. My husband collapsed. He's barely breathing. If by dieser Stale bor, the world faded in and out, darkness creeping in from the sides. My last coherent thought. She did this, she put something in the coffee, then nothing. Fluorescent lights, beeping machines, the antiseptic smell of hospital. I opened my eyes slowly. White ceiling tiles. An IV in my arm. A doctor stood beside the bed checking a chart. He noticed I was awake. Mr. Turner, you're at Providence Portland Medical Center. You had a severe reaction. Your wife brought you in. At what happened? We found extremely high levels of sedatives in your system, enough to cause respiratory failure. How much did you take this morning? My mind raced through the fog. I needed to be careful. Couldn't reveal the truth yet, not until everything was ready. I must have taken my sleep medication by mistake, thought it was my vitamins. The doctor's expression was skeptical. Mr. Turner, the concentration we found would be equivalent to 8 to 10 pills. Are you certain this was accidental? I've been under a lot of stress. Work. I probably wasn't paying attention. He studied me for a long moment. We'll need to keep you overnight for observation. After he left, Betty and Charlotte were allowed in. Betty rushed to the bedside, tears streaming. Stellan, you scared us to death. Charlotte took my hand, squeezing it gently. Her fingers felt cold. Dad, you have to be more careful with your medications. I looked into her eyes, saw perfect concern, perfect worry, a flawless performance. I will, sweetheart, I promise. She held my hand for another moment, then let go. As she turned away, I could swear I saw something else flicker across her face. Disappointment, frustration. She'd expected me to die today. That night, after Betty and Charlotte had gone home after the nurses had checked on me one final time, I locked myself in the hospital bathroom with my phone. My hands shook as I dialed Beverly's number. She tried again, I whispered. Something in the coffee, sedatives. I almost didn't make it. Beverly's voice came through cold as steel. Stellan, we end this now. I'm arranging 24-hour protection, and we need 1 week to prepare everything perfectly. Next Sunday. We'll end this next Sunday. Benjamin called it the end game. I called it justice. Either way, we had 1 week to prepare for the moment that would change everything. Wednesday morning, day 23. I sat in Benjamin's conference room, surrounded by evidence of my family's betrayal. Benjamin, Beverly, and Philip were all present. The table between us was covered with documents, photos, and printed transcripts. Let's review what we have. Benjamin organized the materials into neat stacks. First, the audio recordings. 5 minutes of Betty and Charlotte casually discussing how they'd stolen from me, their voices clear and damning. Next, Beverly's surveillance photos. Ryan with Charlotte kissing, holding hands entering his apartment. Ryan with Betty coffee conversation, careful distance. Then Philip's financial analysis. He'd compiled everything into a single report. $234,000 stolen through wire transfers over 18 months. $120,000 taken through a forged mortgage on your house. $50,000 sent to a fake gym investment that never existed. He looked up at me. Total $404,000. The number sat heavy in the air. The life insurance policy change. Philip continued. $1 million. Beneficiary switched from Betty to Charlotte 6 months ago. Your signature forged. Beverly added her findings. Brake sabotage. We have the mechanics report showing deliberate tampering and the hospital records from the sedative overdose. Benjamin tapped the table. This is enough for criminal prosecution. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to cause harm. The evidence is overwhelming. What about Ryan? I asked. Beverly's expression shifted slightly. I'm still digging. There's something bigger here. Give me 2 more days. We don't have 2 days. Sunday is... I know. She met my eyes. And you'll have everything you need by then, I promise. Security was the next discussion. I've arranged 24-hour protection, Beverly said. Derek, former military. He'll pose as a new neighbor, arm-trained and watching your house constantly. I nodded. The attempts on my life had escalated. I couldn't take chances anymore. My daily routine had changed dramatically. I no longer ate anything Betty or Charlotte prepared. Every meal came from restaurant-sealed containers I opened myself. I locked my bedroom door at night. checked my car thoroughly every morning before starting it. Betty had noticed Tuesday evening. Hey honey, you're acting strange. Is everything okay? I'd forced a smile. Just work stress. Big account about to close. She'd seemed to accept that, but I'd seen the concern in her eyes. Or maybe suspicion. I couldn't tell anymore. Friday evening, day 26. We sat around the dinner table, Betty, Charlotte, and me eating takeout Chinese food. I set down my chopsticks and spoke casually. Let's do a family dinner Sunday night, here at home. Betty looked up, surprised but pleased. That sounds wonderful. What's the occasion? An important announcement about our future. Charlotte's eyes narrowed slightly. I hope it's good news. You'll see. I took a sip of water. Oh, and Charlotte, why don't you invite Ryan? I'd like to meet him officially. The change in her expression was instantaneous. Fear flashed across her face, quickly masked. Ryan, why? Your mother's mentioned how helpful he's been, with her parents' health issues. I'd like to thank him properly. Betty looked confused but didn't object. She still believed Ryan was somehow connected to her helping her family. Charlotte's voice was careful. I'll ask him. Great, Sunday at 7, formal dinner. I returned to my food as if the conversation was trivial, but I'd seen it, that moment of panic. She knew something was wrong. The trap was being set and she could feel it. Saturday, day 27, final preparations. Benjamin called with updates. Police are on standby. Plainclothes unmarked car parked 2 blocks away. They'll move on your signal. Beverly arrived at my house mid-morning to install hidden cameras, small devices positioned around the dining room, living room, and entryway, all feeding to a secure server. Everything will be recorded, she said. Audio and video, court-admissible quality. I spent the afternoon in my office writing and rewriting what I'd say, practicing keeping my voice steady, my hands calm. At 6 o'clock, I called Beverly. The update on Ryan, do you have it yet? I'm tracking something significant. You'll have it tomorrow morning. Stellan, it's bigger than we thought. This information, it's going to change everything. How so? Let's just say that even Charlotte is going to realize she's been deceived. Sunday morning arrived with clear, cold skies. I stood in the kitchen at dawn, watching the sun rise over Portland's skyline. The city woke slowly, lights flickering on, in apartments early traffic beginning to move. By sunset, everything would be different. My family would be shattered. The truth would be exposed. And somewhere across this city, Beverly was preparing the final piece of evidence, a secret about Ryan Cross, that would prove even my daughter had been a pawn in a larger game. I poured myself coffee my own, made with my own hands in my own kitchen, and waited for the day to begin. Sunday evening, 6 o'clock sharp. The dinner to end everything was about to begin. 4 in the afternoon, I'd started setting the dining room table. Fine china we only use for special occasions, white tablecloth, candles and silver holders. Everything arranged with precision. Betty was in the kitchen, the smell of roasting chicken filling the house. Stellan, this looks beautiful, she called out. What's this important announcement you mentioned? You'll hear soon enough. 5 o'clock. Charlotte came downstairs, dressed carefully, black dress, pearl earrings, makeup done perfectly. But her hands kept reaching for her phone. Checking it, setting it down, checking it again. Is Ryan coming? I asked casually. He'll be here at 6. Good. At 5:45, my phone buzzed. Text from Benjamin. Cameras live, police ready. Good luck. I took a deep breath. 5:55. The doorbell rang. Charlotte practically ran to answer it. I stayed in the living room, listening. Hey babe, Ryan's voice, a kiss. You look amazing. They entered together. Ryan wore a button-down shirt and dress pants, his appearance polished and confident. Exactly the kind of man who could charm his way into people's trust. I stood extending my hand. You must be Ryan. I'm Stellan. His handshake was firm, his smile easy. Great to finally meet you, sir. I've heard so much about you. I studied him. Younger than I'd expected, early 30s like Beverly had said. Handsome. The kind of charismatic presence that made you want to believe whatever he said. Ryan, Betty emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. So glad you could make it. She moved to hug him. Ryan returned the embrace politely, but I saw it his body oriented toward Charlotte, even while Betty's arms were around him. A subtle shift. A tell. Betty didn't notice. I noticed everything. Should we sit? Betty gestured toward the dining room. Dinner's almost ready. But I wanted a few more minutes. Wanted to watch them interact in this space where they thought they were safe. Let's chat first, I said. Ryan, can I get you something to drink? Water's fine, thanks. We settled in the living room. Betty returned to the kitchen. Charlotte sat on the couch, Ryan beside her, close but not touching, playing their roles. Beautiful home, Mr. Turner. Thank you, result of 20 years of work. Charlotte mentioned you're a financial advisor. That's right, I met his eyes directly. I help people protect their assets, make sure no one takes advantage of them. Something flickered across his face. Brief, quickly masked, Charlotte stood abruptly. Dad, should we move to the dining room? Mom's probably ready. Of course. The dining room table looked perfect. Candlelight cast warm shadows. The chicken sat golden brown on a serving platter, surrounded by roasted potatoes and vegetables. I took my place at the head of the table. Betty sat to my right, Charlotte to my left, Ryan beside her. Betty brought out the food, serving each of us with practiced efficiency. Charlotte's hands trembled slightly as she accepted her plate. This looks wonderful, honey, I said to Betty. Thank you. She sat down, smoothing her napkin across her lap. Should we say grace? Of course. We joined hands. My right hand held Betty's, my left held Charlotte's. Both of them had betrayed me. Both of them had plotted against me. And here we sat, holding hands like a family. Lord, thank you for this food and for this family. Amen. Amen, we echoed. I released their hands and picked up my fork. The silence was thick, heavy. No one seemed to know how to break it. Betty tried. So Ryan, how did you and Charlotte meet? At the gym where I work, Actually, I interrupted, setting my fork down carefully. The sound of metal on china rang clear in the quiet room. Everyone looked at me. Betty's expression was confused. Charlotte's smile had frozen on her face. Ryan's hand stopped halfway to his mouth, fork suspended in air. I looked at each of them. My wife, my daughter, the man who'd helped destroy my life. They were still performing, still pretending. But the performance was over. Before we continue, I said, voice calm and controlled, there's something we need to discuss. Betty set down her wine glass. Stellan, what's going on? Charlotte's face had gone pale. Ryan lowered his fork, slowly, eyes locked on mine. We need to talk about the $234,000 that's been stolen from me. The words hung in the air like thunder. $234,000. Silence descended over the dining table. Betty's fork clattered onto her plate. What, Stellan? What are you talking about? I kept my voice calm, cold. Weekly wire transfers, $3,000 every week for 18 months, to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Dad, I didn't, Charlotte started. Don't lie anymore, Charlotte, not now. Betty's face had gone white. There must be some mistake. No mistake. I reached beside my chair where I had hidden a folder earlier. I have every transaction documented. I opened it, spreading bank statements across the table. Each transfer was highlighted in yellow. Dates, amounts, destinations, all of it there in black and white. I pushed the folder toward Betty. She looked down at the pages. Her hand trembled as she touched the paper. I can explain. I don't want explanations. I want the truth. Betty's mouth opened, closed. No words came. I pulled out my phone. Let me play something for everyone. Stellan, don't. Betty's voice broke. I pressed play. Betty's voice came through the phone's speaker, clear and unmistakable. Did you transfer the $3,000 this week? Charlotte's reply, done this morning, Mom. Dad never checks the statements anyway. What's the total now? $234,000. The recording continued. 2 minutes of my wife and daughter casually discussing how they'd stolen from me. Every word precise. Every admission damning. Betty's hand flew to her mouth. Tears began streaming down her face. Charlotte sat frozen, face drained of color. Ryan remained perfectly still, watching everything with calculating eyes. When the recording ended, I set the phone down. Recorded 3 weeks ago, at your parents' house in Salem. Betty looked up at me, eyes wide with shock. You were there? Your parents weren't sick, Betty. Never were. You lied so you could meet with Charlotte and plan this. I kept my voice level. I heard everything. I saw everything. Stellan, I'm so sorry. Betty's voice shook. Sorry for what? For stealing from me, or for getting caught. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I was lonely. The words burst out of her. You were never home, always working, always with clients. So you stole from me. That's your justification. Yet Charlotte said we deserved it, that you wouldn't even notice the money was gone. I turned to Charlotte. You said that. My daughter's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Dad let me explain. I've heard enough lies. I pulled out more documents. House mortgage, $120,000, taken out a year ago. I slid the paper toward Betty. Look at the signature. She looked. Her face went even paler. That's not my signature, I said quietly. It's a forgery. Someone used my name to take out a loan against our house. I added another document to the pile. Fake gym investment, $50,000, sent to a business that doesn't exist. Betty stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. $404,000, all of it gone. I didn't know about those, Betty sobbed. Stellan, I swear I only knew about the weekly transfers. But you knew enough. My voice was ice. You knew you were stealing from me. You knew you were lying to me every single day. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. Charlotte sat rigid in her chair, not moving, barely breathing. And Ryan watched it all unfold with the detachment of someone watching a play. I let the silence stretch, let them sit with what they had done. Then I spoke again. But that's not even the worst part, Betty. She looked up, tears streaming. What do you mean? The worst part is what you don't know. I looked at Charlotte, then at Ryan, then back to Betty. Tell your mother the truth, Charlotte. Tell her about Ryan. All the color drained from Charlotte's face. She looked like she might be sick. Ryan's jaw tightened. His hand moved slightly under the table. Betty looked between them, confusion replacing some of the grief in her eyes. What about Ryan? He's been helping us, helping my parents. Helping you? I let the question hang. Or using you? I don't understand. I think you do. Deep down, I think you've known something wasn't right. Betty looked at Ryan, really looked at him. For the first time, I saw doubt creep into her expression. Ryan has been very attentive to our family, I continued. To you, Betty, making you feel seen, feel valued. Hasn't he? She nodded slowly, uncertain where this was going. And you believed he cared about you? That maybe after all these years of me being absent, someone finally saw you? More tears fell. Stellan, but look at where he's sitting, Betty. Who he chose to sit next to. She looked. Ryan sat beside Charlotte, not beside her. Look at how he's sitting. Under the table, I could see what Betty couldn't, Ryan's hand gripping Charlotte's thigh. Charlotte leaning slightly toward him, not away from him. Betty's eyes moved between them, confusion deepening. She didn't understand yet, but she was about to. I reached under my chair and pulled out a tablet I had hidden there before dinner, opened a video file. Beverly Quinn is an excellent investigator. I pressed play and turned the screen toward Betty. The video showed a street corner in the Pearl District. Ryan and Charlotte standing close together outside an apartment building. Then Ryan pulled her in, kissing her deeply, his hand on her waist, her fingers touching his face, both of them smiling. The timestamp read Tuesday last week, 2:47 p.m. Betty's face transformed, disbelief, suspicion, then horror. No, that can't be. The video auto-played to the next clip, a coffee shop. Charlotte sitting on Ryan's lap, his arms wrapped around her waist. Another clip, a restaurant, hands clasped across the table, looking at each other the way lovers do. Another, the apartment building at night, 11 p.m., entering together. Betty stood so abruptly her chair scraped loudly across the floor. Charlotte, you and Ryan? Tears streamed down Charlotte's face. Mom, I'm sorry. You're sorry, Betty's voice cracked. I thought he loved me. He never loved you, Betty. I kept my voice cold. He was using you. Ryan spoke for the first time since we'd sat down. This is ridiculous. Sit down, Ryan. I'm not finished. He remained standing, posture defensive. I continued looking at Betty. Charlotte met Ryan 10 months ago. They planned everything. The theft, the offshore accounts, using you as an accomplice without you even knowing the full scope. Betty turned to Charlotte, face twisted with hurt. You let me think I was having an affair with him. You told me he cared about me. But Mom, you weren't happy with Dad. So you used my loneliness, my unhappiness to steal from your father. She used everything I said. Your marital problems, my work schedule, even your parents. My parents knew about this too. No, they're innocent. That day they were legitimately sick, but Charlotte used it as cover to meet with Ryan and finalize plans. Dad, please. Charlotte reached toward me. But theft wasn't enough for you, was it, Charlotte? I pulled out more documents, placed them on the table one by one. Life insurance beneficiary change, 6 months ago. Change from your mother to you, $1 million. I let that sink in. I never signed that authorization. It's forged. Another document. Mechanics report. My brake lines were deliberately cut 3 weeks ago. I nearly crashed on Interstate 5 at 65 miles per hour. Betty's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God! And 2 Sundays ago, I collapsed after drinking coffee you made Charlotte. The hospital found dangerous levels of sedatives in my system, enough to cause respiratory failure. Betty turned to Charlotte, eyes wide with horror. You tried to hurt your father. No, I would never. I have recordings, Charlotte. I heard you on the phone with Ryan. When will it happen? You asked him. I need that insurance money, you said. Charlotte's face crumpled. I was drowning in debt. Austin Stone scammed me out of $85,000. I lost everything. Ryan said he'd help me. Ryan helped you plan to end my life. That's a lie. Ryan's voice was sharp. I ignored him, keeping my focus on the devastation spreading across Betty's face. I thought we were in this together. Betty stared at Charlotte like looking at a stranger. Mother and daughter. You were just a pawn, Betty. Charlotte and Ryan played you from the very beginning. Betty sat down heavily, covering her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. My daughter. Charlotte reached for her. Mom, please. Betty pushed her hand away violently. Don't touch me. The words hung in the air. A mother rejecting her child. Charlotte sobbed, but Betty turned her face away. I stood up from my chair and moved toward the dining room doorway. Everyone's eyes followed me. But there's one more thing, I said quietly. One final lie that needs exposing. I looked directly at Ryan. Tell them, Ryan. Tell them about your real life, the one Charlotte doesn't know about. Ryan's face went pale. The confident mask he'd worn all evening finally cracked. For the first time that night, he looked truly afraid. I stepped to the dining room doorway and called out, You can come in now. Before I reveal what happened next, pause for a moment. What do you think is about to unfold, and how curious are you right now about what's coming? Share your thoughts or your level of anticipation in the comments, so I know you're still here with me. Please note, the next part of this story includes fictionalized elements for storytelling and learning purposes. If this isn't something you'd like to continue with, you're free to stop watching here. The sound of the front door opening echoed through the house. Footsteps in the hallway, slow, hesitant, uncertain. A young woman appeared in the doorway, holding a small boy in her arms. She wore scrubs visible beneath an open jacket, her face showing the exhaustion of a double shift. The boy, maybe 5 years old, clutched a teddy bear to his chest and looked around with wide, confused eyes that took in the fancy dining room, the overturned documents, the frozen faces staring at him. Absolute silence fell over the room, like a physical weight. Ryan's fork clattered against his plate. His face went white, not pale, but actually white, like someone had drained all the blood from his body in an instant. Then he stood so abruptly his chair toppled backward with a crash that made Noah flinch and bury his face in his mother's shoulder. No, no, no. The word came out like a prayer, like he could somehow make reality disappear by denying it. The woman looked at him, confusion and concern mixing in her voice. Ryan, what's going on? You said this was an important meeting with a client. I kept my voice calm, measured as if I were introducing guests at a dinner party instead of detonating a bomb. Everyone, this is Megan Cross, and this is Noah. Charlotte's head whipped toward them so fast I heard her neck crack. Who are they? I let the silence stretch for 3 heartbeats. 4, 5. Megan is Ryan's wife. Noah is his 5-year-old son. The words hung in the air for one perfect crystalline moment before everything exploded. Charlotte shot to her feet, her whole body trembling like she'd been electrocuted. Her chair scraped backward with a screech. Wife's son, Ryan, you said you were single. You said you'd never been married. Betty's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes darted between Ryan and the woman in the doorway, trying to process what she was seeing. Oh my God, oh my God. Megan took a step backward, instinctively pulling Noah closer, her eyes filled with tears. Ryan, who are these people? Why is that woman calling you? Ryan held up both hands like he could physically push reality away. Megan, this isn't, I can explain. You can't explain this. Charlotte's voice cracked with hysteria. She pointed at Noah with a shaking hand. You have a child. I moved toward Megan, gently keeping my movement slow so as not to frighten Noah further. The boy's eyes were wide, his teddy bear clutched so tightly his knuckles were white. Megan, thank you for coming. I know this is incredibly difficult. Mr. Turner, you said you had important information about my husband. Her voice broke. You said it was urgent that I needed to bring Noah that. Please sit down. I gestured toward Betty's empty seat. Then I crouched down to Noah's eye level. Noah, would you like some cookies in the kitchen? Maybe watch something on an iPad. I have cartoons. The boy looked up at his mother uncertainly. Megan hesitated, looking around the room, at Ryan's pale face, at Charlotte's tears, at Betty's shell-shocked expression. Then she nodded slowly. "Noah, sweetheart, go with this nice man for just a minute, okay? Mommy needs to talk to some grown-ups." Noah's small voice, "Is Daddy in trouble?" The question hung in the air. No one answered. I took Noah's hand, so small, so trusting, and led him to the kitchen. Set him up at the counter with a plate of chocolate chip cookies and the iPad playing Paw Patrol. He settled in, happily swinging his legs, oblivious to the devastation unfolding just one room away. When I returned to the dining room, all eyes were on me, except Ryan's. He was staring at the floor, his jaw working, but no sound coming out. "Megan lives in Vancouver, Washington." I began, my voice steady. "She's a nurse at Providence Hospital, works the night shift most weeks. She's been married to Ryan for 6 years. 7. Megan corrected quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. 7 years this past June. We had a party. Noah drew pictures. You said..." She looked at Ryan. "You said it was the best day of your life." He still wouldn't look at her. I nodded. During my investigation, I discovered that Ryan has been living a double life. Monday through Wednesday in Vancouver with you and Noah. I pointed toward Charlotte. And Thursday through Sunday here in Portland with my daughter. "That's not true." Charlotte's voice was desperate now, pleading. "Ryan, tell them it's not true." But Ryan said nothing. Just stood there like a statue, his hands clenched at his sides. "The training clients he told you about?" I looked at Megan. "That was Charlotte. The consulting work that kept him in Portland. That was this affair." Megan turned to Ryan, her voice shaking. "All those nights you said you were training late clients. All those weekends you said you had to work. Noah's preschool tuition that suddenly got paid in full. The new car we couldn't afford. Where did it all come from?" Silence. "Answer her!" Charlotte screamed. "Tell her where you got the money." "From this family," I said quietly. "From accounts my daughter stole from me over 18 months. $234,000. Money that was supposed to be for her future, for our retirement. Ryan's been using it to fund his life with you, Megan. Your car, Noah's school, your mortgage payments, all of it." Megan covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming down her face. "Noah's tuition. Our house. It was all stolen money. I'm sorry, Megan. You deserve to know the truth." Charlotte stepped toward Ryan, hands outstretched like she was drowning, and he was the only lifeline. "You said you loved me. You said we'd get married once we had enough money. You said..." Her voice broke into a sob. "You said you'd never leave me." Ryan finally spoke, his voice hollow and dead. "Charlotte, you said I was the only one. You said Betty was just a means to an end, that I was the real plan." Megan's laugh was bitter and broken. "He told me the same things on our wedding day 7 years ago. He said I was his forever." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Charlotte collapsed back into her chair, her whole body folding in on itself like she'd been punched in the stomach. She buried her face in her hands. "It was all lies. Everything. All of it. Yes." I kept my voice steady even though inside I felt nothing but ice. "Ryan Cross is a professional con man. He targeted you, Charlotte. Saw your vulnerability, your desperation, and he exploited it. Used you to access my money. Used your mother's loneliness to maintain his cover, the same way he's been using Megan and Noah. No," Charlotte's voice was muffled by her hands. "No, he wouldn't." "He would, and he did." I turned to Megan. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way." Megan wiped her eyes, straightening her spine. "I'm glad I know. Better late than never." She looked at Ryan with something that might have been pity. "Our marriage is over. I'll file for divorce tomorrow." Megan, please." Ryan finally found his voice desperate and pleading. "Don't." She held up a hand. "Don't you dare speak to me right now. Not after this. Not after you used our son's tuition money." Her voice broke. "Our child. How could you..." Charlotte looked up at me, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know..." "Sorry isn't enough, Charlotte. Austin Stone took everything from me. $85,000. I was desperate. I had nothing. Ryan said he'd help me. And you chose to trust a stranger over your own father. I had to force the next words out past the lump in my throat. You chose money over family. You chose to steal from me. To change my life insurance policy. To cut my brake lines. To poison my coffee." She sobbed harder, but said nothing. What could she say? "You chose," I repeated, "to try to end my life. Betty finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "Stellan, please." I looked at her, this woman I'd been married to for 24 years. This woman who'd sat in that same chair for thousands of dinners, who'd raised our daughter, who'd stood beside me at weddings and funerals and every moment in between. "You enabled all of it," I said quietly. "You saw what was happening, you heard the conversations, you knew about the money, and you said nothing." "I didn't think," she stopped, started again. "I thought it was just a loan, a loan that was never discussed with me, that I never agreed to." I shook my head. "You're as guilty as they are." The room fell silent again, except for Charlotte's muffled sobs and Noah's distant laughter from the kitchen as Paw Patrol played on. I pulled out my phone and made a call. "Detective Warren, you can come in now." The front door opened again this time, with purpose, with authority. 2 uniformed police officers entered first, their hands resting on their belts. Behind them came a woman in her 40s, wearing a detective's badge clipped to her belt. "Mr. Turner," Detective Warren nodded to me, all business. "We heard everything through the wire." I touched the small recording device clipped inside my shirt collar. "You have all the evidence?" Every word, crystal clear. She turned to face Charlotte and Ryan, her expression professional and cold. "As to Charlotte Turner and Ryan Cross, you're both under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to cause serious bodily harm." She began reading them their Miranda rights in a steady, practiced voice. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Charlotte stood on shaking legs as a uniformed officer moved behind her with handcuffs. The metallic click echoed through the room. "Dad, please!" Charlotte's voice rose to a scream. "Don't do this. Please, I'm your daughter." I turned away, couldn't watch, couldn't bear to see the handcuffs on her wrists. "You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you." The second officer cuffed Ryan, who went quietly, his face blank, all the charm and confidence drained away, leaving only empty shell. They led Charlotte toward the door. She twisted in the officer's grip, looking back at me one final time. "Daddy," she whispered. She hadn't called me that since she was 10 years old. But I said nothing, just watched as they guided her out the door and into the waiting police car. Through the dining room windows, red and blue lights flashed rhythmically, painting the walls in alternating colors like a twisted disco. Betty sat at the dining table, completely collapsed, her whole body shaking with sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. Megan held Noah, who'd come running from the kitchen when he heard the commotion, the boy's small face confused and frightened, tears starting to stream down his cheeks as he watched his father being led away in handcuffs. "Oi, Mommy, why are they taking Daddy? What did Daddy do?" "One basin, histori tor." Megan couldn't answer, just held him tighter. And I stood alone in the center of the dining room, surrounded by the wreckage of everything I'd ever built. The overturned chair, the scattered documents, the cold dinner no one had eaten, the half-empty wine glasses, the family that had just been destroyed beyond repair. Justice had been served, but the price was everything I'd ever loved. Through the window, I watched the police cars pull away, their lights fading into the distance. Betty sobbed. Noah cried for his father. Megan stared at nothing. And I stood in the ruins of my life, wondering if this was what victory was supposed to feel like. The days and weeks that followed the arrests became an indistinct haze of legal consultations, judicial proceedings, and relentless media scrutiny that I'd never asked for and certainly never anticipated. The initial 7 days arrived with crushing impact. 8 full hours were spent inside the police station as I provided my complete account of events, every single detail I could recall, every audio recording I'd collected, every piece of documentation Benjamin and I had compiled. The investigating detectives approached their work with precision and patience, leaving absolutely nothing unexplored. When I finally stepped out of that building into the evening air, night had already fallen across the city, and my throat felt raw from constant talking. Both Charlotte and Ryan were refused bail at their arraignment hearing. The presiding judge declared them flight risks, citing the existence of offshore financial accounts and substantial evidence suggesting premeditated planning. They would be held in the county detention facility awaiting trial. Betty underwent extensive questioning that stretched across multiple hours. However, she provided full cooperation with authorities, surrendering every piece of information she possessed. 48 hours after her interrogation concluded, she packed her belongings and departed from our Oak Ridge Drive home, relocating to her sister's residence on the opposite side of town. The media vultures circled immediately. Headlines screamed across local newspapers and television broadcasts. Local father exposes daughter's elaborate theft plot. My telephone became an instrument of torture, ringing incessantly at all hours. Journalists hunting for exclusive interviews, friends expressing concern and disbelief, complete strangers with morbid curiosity demanding intimate details. I eventually disconnected that number entirely and obtained a new one. My existence transformed into something ghost-like, moving through each day without truly being present in my own experience. Benjamin took charge of all media interactions. His standard response became a practiced refrain. Mr. Turner requests privacy during this extraordinarily difficult time. Yet privacy, I discovered, simply meant isolation within that cavernous echoing house. I wandered through spaces that had suddenly grown too expansive, too silent, too filled with memories that now felt contaminated. One afternoon, I discovered myself standing motionless in Charlotte's childhood bedroom, my gaze traveling across her athletic trophies from high school competitions, her framed graduation photographs displaying that radiant smile, the elaborate collage covering one entire wall, snapshots of birthday parties, family vacations, moments of joy that now seemed like elaborate fabrications. What mistakes had I made as a father? Where had my guidance failed so completely? Weeks 2 through 8 were consumed entirely by trial preparation activities. The prosecution team, directed by Assistant District Attorney Sarah Mitchell, a seasoned attorney with 2 decades of courtroom experience and a well-earned reputation for being absolutely relentless in pursuit of convictions, constructed their case with meticulous attention to every element. The defense attorneys for both defendants attempted to negotiate reduced charges through plea bargaining arrangements. Benjamin sat positioned across from me at his polished conference table, his expression serious. The prosecution has authorized me to communicate an offer. Charlotte could enter a guilty plea to reduced charges. The sentence would be 3 years incarceration rather than the potential 10 she's currently facing. Absolutely not. No deals whatsoever. Hey, it's Stellan. I need you to understand what you're committing to here. Watching Charlotte take the witness stand, hearing her testimony, seeing her cross-examine this process is going to inflict tremendous pain on you. I require the complete truth to be established in the official court record. All of it. Every action that was taken. Every decision that was made. I won't accept shortcuts or compromises. He observed me carefully for an extended moment, searching my face for any hint of uncertainty, then acknowledged my decision with a slight nod. Then we proceed to a full trial. The preliminary hearings proved absolutely grueling. Charlotte's defense counsel constructed their argument around manipulation. My client is fundamentally a victim of systematic psychological abuse and calculated gaslighting perpetrated by Ryan Cross. She was exploited and controlled by someone who recognized her vulnerabilities and weaponized them for his own criminal purposes. Ryan's defense team challenged the strength of the evidence. The prosecution has failed to establish physical proof that our client directly attempted to cause bodily harm to Mr. Turner. The case relies heavily on circumstantial connections and speculative interpretations. However, the moment that extracted the deepest pain came when Betty was called to provide testimony not for the defense, but for the prosecution, against our own daughter. As Charlotte specifically told me that Stellan wouldn't notice the missing money. Betty stated, her voice trembling, despite her attempt at composure. She said he was too absorbed in his work, too disconnected from the family finances. She also said, Betty paused, swallowing hard, before continuing. She said he deserved what was happening to him, that he'd earned it through years of emotional neglect. Megan initiated divorce proceedings against Ryan within days of his arrest. When she appeared as a witness, her voice maintained steadiness, even as tears tracked down her cheeks. He provided countless excuses about working late hours at the gym, training clients who demanded evening sessions, inventory management that required his personal attention. In reality, he was spending those hours with Charlotte, planning how to systematically steal from her father. March 15th arrived. The trial commenced. The courtroom gallery was filled to absolute capacity. Media representatives occupied every available seat designated for press. Public spectators lined the remaining spaces. People I'd known for years, neighbors, business associates, casual acquaintances, sat watching as my private devastation was transformed into public entertainment and official legal record. Day 2 brought my own testimony. 4 exhausting hours on the witness stand. I provided detailed descriptions of discovering the financial theft during my visit to Salem. I explained the process of installing recording devices throughout my home. I recounted the terrifying brake failure incident on Interstate 5 that had nearly ended my life. I described finding sedatives dissolved in my morning coffee and the subsequent laboratory analysis confirming their presence and dangerous concentration. The cross-examination proved absolutely brutal in its intensity. Mr. Turner, would you characterize yourself as an emotionally distant father during Charlotte's upbringing? I worked extremely hard to provide financial security and opportunities for my family. I believed that was my primary responsibility. But I'm asking about emotional connection, Mr. Turner. Did you ever explicitly tell Charlotte that you loved her? Every single day of her life, without exception. Yet despite these alleged daily affirmations, she felt desperate enough to steal substantial sums from you over an extended period. Why do you believe that is, Mr. Turner? What do you think motivated such extreme betrayal? I sat there in silence for several seconds, struggling to formulate any response that would adequately address the question. No answer existed that would satisfy them or truly explain the incomprehensible transformation of my daughter into someone capable of such calculated cruelty. Day 5 brought Charlotte herself to the witness stand. Tears were already streaming down her face before the prosecutor posed even the first question. Her entire body shook as she attempted to speak, her voice barely rising above a whisper. I made terrible, unforgivable mistakes. I was drowning in debt, $85,000 accumulated through poor decisions and misplaced trust. Austin Stone had executed an elaborate scam that cleaned out my savings. I was desperate, terrified, seeing no possible way forward. Ryan promised to help me, offered solutions that seemed reasonable at first. I trusted him completely. The prosecutor's voice carried no warmth or sympathy. Ms. Turner, on the morning of March 10th, did you deliberately place sedative medication in your father's coffee? An extended silence filled the courtroom. Every person present waited, barely breathing. Yes, I did. Were you aware that the dosage you administered could potentially end his life? Another lengthy pause stretched across seconds that felt like hours. Then her response came barely audible. Yes, I knew. The courtroom exploded into gasps of shock and scattered murmurs of disbelief. The judge was forced to strike his gavel, repeatedly demanding order be restored. March 28th. After 6 hours of closed-door deliberation, the jury returned to deliver their verdicts. Ryan Cross guilty on all charges presented. 12 years imprisonment for financial fraud, criminal conspiracy violations related to bigamous marriage, and conspiracy to cause serious bodily harm. Charlotte Turner guilty on all charges presented. 8 years imprisonment for financial fraud, criminal conspiracy, and conspiracy to cause serious bodily harm. Betty Turner, having entered a guilty plea to reduced charges and provided full cooperation with the prosecution's investigation, she received 3 years supervised probation and 500 hours of mandatory community service. As the bailiffs approached to lead Charlotte away in restraints, she turned her head and looked directly at me one final time. Her eyes contained nothing. No remorse, no love, no recognition of the bond we'd once shared. Completely hollow. The daughter I'd raised with such hope and devotion, the little girl who used to climb into my lap, requesting bedtime stories, who'd brought me drawings from school, who'd hugged me tight after her college graduation, that person had vanished entirely. Standing in her place was a stranger who'd systematically stolen from me, lied to me, and ultimately attempted to end my life for financial gain. I walked through the courthouse doors into Portland's characteristic gray drizzle. Benjamin walked alongside me, holding an umbrella positioned to shelter both our heads from the steady rain. "It's over now," he said quietly. But I understood the real truth. The legal battle had reached its conclusion. The emotional battle, the psychological reconstruction of everything I'd believed about my family, my life, my judgment, was only just beginning. The office of Dr. Helen Carver transformed into my refuge during those difficult months. 2 appointments each week found me seated in that therapeutic space, attempting to reconstruct the shattered fragments of my identity and sense of self. April brought my initial consultation. The environment defied all my preconceived notions about therapy spaces. Gentle illumination diffused through translucent window coverings. Inviting armchairs replaced the stereotypical analytical couch. Vegetation flourished throughout delicate ferns and hardy succulents that infused the room with an unexpected vitality. Dr. Carver had reached 48 years of age, possessing perceptive eyes that appeared capable of penetrating every psychological barrier I'd constructed over the decades. "Stellan, tell me what's brought you to seek help today." My gaze remained fixed on my interlocked fingers resting in my lap. I've lost the ability to process emotions properly. My own daughter orchestrated plans to end my life. My wife actively participated in systematically stealing from me over years. The legal system delivered justice through convictions and sentences, but I experienced no improvement in my psychological state, no relief whatsoever. Justice and healing represent fundamentally different processes, she explained with gentle patience. Justice operates externally, verdicts delivered in the courtrooms, sentences carried out in correctional facilities. Healing functions, internally transformation that occurs here. She placed her palm against her sternum, within the heart and mind where true recovery takes place. How does someone heal from betrayal of this magnitude? By granting yourself permission to experience the complete spectrum of emotions without judgment or suppression. The rage, the profound grief, the devastating sense of betrayal. Every feeling deserves acknowledgement. Eventually, healing requires making a conscious choice, selecting peace over the corrosive nature of bitterness and resentment. That outcome seemed utterly unattainable in that moment. The therapeutic sessions established a consistent rhythm. Twice weekly during Tuesday and Friday afternoon appointments, I occupied that chair and gradually began excavating and examining 24 years of accumulated experiences, beliefs, and memories. During the third week, my emotional control shattered entirely. What failures in my parenting created this outcome? Stopped. Dr. Carver shifted forward in her seat, her expression earnest. "Stellan, you need to hear this clearly. You didn't fail as a parent. Charlotte made conscious choices, objectively bad choices, morally terrible choices, but they originated from her own agency and decision-making, not from your parenting. But surely I committed some fundamental error in raising her. Parents who succeed at their role don't produce children who become capable of... Effective parents raise children who remain fundamentally human beings," she interrupted with firm conviction. "Humans who retain free will. Humans who maintain the capacity to make catastrophically poor decisions, regardless of their upbringing." Her tone carried absolute certainty. You cannot control another individual's choices through any parenting approach, not even when that individual is your own child. By the 6th week, our discussion centered on Betty and our marriage. 24 years of marriage. Was any portion of it genuine and real? Certain elements were absolutely real, Dr. Carver responded thoughtfully. Human beings exist as complex entities, Stellan. Betty experienced authentic love for you. At some point, I genuinely believe that. Subsequently, transformations occurred. Perhaps Betty herself changed fundamentally. Perhaps the dynamics of your marriage evolved beyond repair. That reality doesn't retroactively erase the positive years you shared. It simply means the narrative concluded differently than you'd anticipated or hoped. When May arrived, she proposed I participate in a support group setting. Survivors of family fraud and betrayal. The meetings convened Wednesday evenings in a church basement located across town from my residence. I entered that first evening consumed with nervousness, possessing no framework for what I'd encounter. 12 individuals sat arranged in a circle formation, men and women spanning ages from their 20s through their 70s, each one carrying the profound weight of family betrayal. The group facilitator offered an encouraging smile. "Welcome to everyone here tonight. Who feels ready to share their experience first?" I remained silent throughout that initial meeting, simply absorbing others' stories. A man appearing to be in his mid-50s spoke first. "My younger brother systematically stole my entire inheritance. He cleaned out every one of my mother's financial accounts during the final months before her death. We haven't exchanged a single word in 5 years. He's essentially dead to me now." A woman who'd reached her mid-60s shared next. "My son forged my signature on numerous legal documents and effectively stole my house through fraudulent transfer of deed. I'm currently living with my daughter because I have nowhere else to go at my age." A younger man, perhaps 30 years old, offered his story. "My wife and her boyfriend systematically drained all our joint accounts during my deployment overseas with the military. I returned home from serving my country to discover absolutely nothing remained. 0 savings, maxed credit cards, empty apartment." Each narrative contained unique details and circumstances. yet the foundational pain underlying every story remained identical. The realization struck me powerfully. I'm not suffering alone. By the third week of attendance, I shared my own story with the group. I maintained brevity, daughter, drowning in debt, systematic theft, over years attempted harm through sedatives and vehicle tampering, criminal trial, conviction, 8-year prison sentence. The group members nodded with understanding. They comprehended without requiring elaborate explanations or justifications from me. A woman named Patricia, perhaps in her early 60s, spoke with quiet insight. The most difficult aspect to overcome isn't the financial loss, is it? No, it's not. It's the trust, that foundation of trust you'll never recover or experience again. Exactly, you've articulated it perfectly. June and July passed with gradual progress. The sessions with Dr. Carver continued their steady work of helping me process trauma and rebuild my sense of self. The support group meetings provided validation and community with others who understood this specific form of devastating betrayal. August arrived, bringing an unexpected moment of clarity and purpose. I awakened one Saturday morning with absolute certainty about what I needed to accomplish. I needed to see Charlotte face to face, direct confrontation and communication. I immediately called Benjamin's office number. Can you arrange authorization for a prison visitation? Are you certain about this decision? Stellan, this encounter could prove incredibly painful and potentially set back your therapeutic progress. I need closure for my own psychological well-being. This isn't optional anymore. The visitation request received approval for the following Saturday, August 12th, scheduled for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I drove southward toward Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, 45 minutes through rural farmland and scattered small towns. My hands trembled noticeably against the steering wheel throughout the journey. What words will I find when we're face to face? Security procedures proved thoroughly comprehensive. Metal detection screening, identification verification through multiple checks, detailed instructions regarding prohibited items and restricted behaviors. The visitation area matched every stereotype I'd internalized: colorless gray walls, uncomfortable plastic chairs, uniformed guards monitoring every interaction. A thick glass partition created physical separation between visitors and incarcerated individuals. I selected a seat and waited, my heartbeat accelerating. The door on the opposite side opened with a metallic sound. Charlotte entered wearing standard-issue prison clothing. She'd lost significant weight since the trial. Her hair was pulled back into a simple, practical style. No cosmetics enhanced her features. She appeared younger somehow, more closely resembling the daughter I remembered from years past. She lowered herself into the chair positioned across from mine. We each lifted telephone handsets from either side of the glass barrier. Extended silence filled the space between us. "Dad?" Her voice fractured immediately. Tears began flowing down her cheeks before she'd spoken another word. "Hello, Charlotte. I'm so incredibly sorry, so profoundly, deeply sorry for everything. I know you are. I was terrified, behaving stupidly. Ryan convinced me to believe things that weren't true. Ryan didn't force you to do anything," I interrupted, maintaining a calm but firm tone. "You made conscious choices, Charlotte. Your choices and yours alone. I know that now." She was sobbing openly. "I'll carry this regret every single day for the remainder of my life. It will never leave me." I observed my daughter through that transparent barrier separating us. I carefully spoke the words I'd rehearsed repeatedly with Dr. Carver over recent weeks, practicing until they felt authentic rather than performative. "Charlotte, I want you to hear me clearly. I forgive you." She collapsed forward, her body shaking with intensified sobbing. But my statement wasn't complete. I forgive you, and this is crucial to understand, not because your actions deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve peace in my own life. Forgiveness doesn't constitute an endorsement, suggesting what you did was acceptable or justifiable. It doesn't mean I'll forget the reality of what occurred. It certainly doesn't mean you won't serve your full sentence or face appropriate consequences. What it means is that I'm making a conscious choice to release the hatred and resentment that's been systematically destroying me from within. Her palm pressed against the glass surface between us. "You took my financial security, my ability to trust, my family structure and sense of belonging, but you cannot take my capacity to move forward into a healthier future. That belongs exclusively to me, and I'm actively reclaiming it right now." I rose from the chair. "Dad, please don't leave yet. Please stay. but I replaced the telephone handset and turned toward the exit corridor. Behind me, Charlotte's crying continued audible even through the glass. I could perceive her in my peripheral vision, her hands still pressed desperately against the barrier, but I maintained my forward movement without hesitation. Because forgiveness, true forgiveness, wasn't about her emotional needs anymore. It concerned my own healing and liberation. September arrived with its characteristic cooler temperatures and changing leaves. I continued my twice-weekly sessions with Dr. Carver, continued attending Wednesday evening support, group meetings, continued the gradual work of reconstructing my life. One Tuesday afternoon session, Dr. Carver posed a significant question. "Isid Ellen, what does your future look like? When you imagine yourself 5 years from now, what do you see?" I considered carefully before responding. "I see someone who's learned to trust again cautiously. Someone who's built new relationships based on honesty. Someone who's found purpose beyond what was taken from me." "That's a beautiful vision," she said warmly. "Now we work toward making it reality." The healing process wasn't linear or predictable. Some days brought unexpected setbacks, a news article about the case running into someone who asked intrusive questions, discovering a photograph that triggered painful memories. Other days offered surprising progress, laughing genuinely at something funny, enjoying a peaceful evening, without intrusive thoughts, feeling hopeful about future possibilities. By late September, I'd made another significant decision. I would eventually sell the Oak Ridge Drive house. Too many memories haunted those rooms. I needed a fresh environment, a space without the accumulated weight of betrayal. But I wasn't ready yet. That decision could wait until I'd progressed further in therapy. For now, I focused on the daily work of healing. One session at a time, one support group meeting at a time, one conscious choice toward peace at a time. Dr. Carver had been right from that very first session. Justice and healing were different things entirely. Justice I'd received through the legal system. Healing I had to create for myself day by day, choice by choice. And slowly, painfully, courageously, I was doing exactly that. The dawn breaking over the Willamette River carried a beauty I'd never fully appreciated until this particular morning. I positioned myself at Tom McCall Waterfront Park, precisely at 6:30 a.m., observing as the initial rays of October sunlight transformed the water into a canvas of gold and amber hues. Autumn leaves descended gracefully from the trees arranged along the riverbank, settling gently onto the pathway where I had just completed my morning run. My breathing maintained a steady, controlled rhythm, no longer resembling the shallow, anxiety-driven respiration that had characterized my existence 12 months prior. Exactly 365 days ago, I uncovered the betrayal that demolished my family structure. Exactly 1 year prior to this moment, I commenced the arduous journey from innocent trust toward devastating revelation. The significance of this anniversary wasn't lost on my consciousness. I'd acknowledged it, intentionally making the deliberate choice to spend this morning beside the river rather than retreating from the memories. A year transforms everything. A year transforms nothing. Somehow, both declarations resonated as truth. The transformations I'd embraced. I finalized the sale of the West Hills residence 3 months following the trial's conclusion. Continuing to inhabit that space had become psychologically untenable, not in the dining room where I'd confronted my wife and daughter with evidence of their crimes, not in the kitchen where Charlotte had dissolved sedatives into my morning coffee, not in the master bedroom where I'd remained awake through countless nights questioning whether my own family was orchestrating my death. The property attracted a buyer quickly. When I transferred the keys to the new owners, I deliberately avoided looking backward. My current apartment in the Pearl District offered significantly less square footage, embraced simplicity, and belonged entirely to me alone. No lingering spirits, no painful recollections. Simply pristine white walls and eastern-facing windows that welcomed the morning sunlight. I maintained a minimalist approach to furnishings, a comfortable couch, a quality bed, a compact desk, where I conducted my professional work. Material possessions no longer held their previous importance. The items I'd once considered essential, the spacious house, the expensive furniture pieces, the carefully curated family photographs, none of it carried weight anymore. I restructured my professional life to focus on part-time consulting within financial advisory services. I retained clients who continued placing confidence in my abilities, individuals who valued my accumulated expertise. However, I'd completely abandoned the 60-hour work weeks. I no longer sacrificed weekends and holidays on the altar of professional achievement. That painful lesson had been thoroughly learned, Unlimited wealth means absolutely nothing if you sacrifice your authentic self during its accumulation. Instead of obsessing over career advancement, I'd initiated volunteer activities. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, I delivered instruction for a complimentary course at Portland Community College titled Protecting Yourself from Financial Fraud, Even from Family Members. The inaugural session attracted 12 attendees. By the third week, the classroom accommodated 40 students at capacity, young adults attempting to navigate their first credit card responsibilities, immigrant families learning to understand the American financial system's complexities, elderly individuals who'd experienced financial exploitation by their own children or designated caregivers. I recognized myself within each participant, the vulnerability, the fundamental desire to trust others, the paralyzing fear regarding what might occur without adequate self-protection. I shared my personal story with complete transparency, not seeking sympathy or validation, but offering education and prevention. If my suffering could prevent even a single person from experiencing what I'd endured, the exposure felt worthwhile. During last month's session, a woman appearing to be in her mid-70s approached me after class conclusion, with moisture gathering in her eyes. Her son had been systematically forging checks from her account over a 3-year period. She'd harbored suspicions, but couldn't bring herself to believe the truth. My class provided her with the courage necessary to file an official report. She embraced me tightly and whispered with trembling voice, "Thank you for saving what remains of my life." That embrace occupied my thoughts frequently. It reinforced why I maintained commitment to teaching why I consistently appeared, regardless of my personal emotional state. Beyond classroom instruction, I'd also begun mentoring young professionals through a local non-profit organization. Every Saturday morning, without exception, I convened with 2 or 3 mentees at a downtown coffee establishment, providing guidance regarding career decisions, financial planning strategies, and significant life choices. Most mentees had reached their 20s, approximately Charlotte's age range. I attempted not to overthink that parallel, though the connection existed undeniably. Perhaps assisting them represented my method of reclaiming what I'd lost with my daughter. Perhaps it simply constituted the morally correct action. During one particularly memorable Saturday session, a young man named Marcus had confided his struggles. "My girlfriend keeps asking me to loan her money. Small amounts at first, now it's thousands. I love her, but something feels wrong." I'd looked him directly in the eyes and spoken with absolute clarity. "Trust that instinct. Love doesn't demand financial sacrifice that makes you uncomfortable. Real love respects boundaries." 2 weeks later, Marcus sent a text message. I ended it, found out she was lying about why she needed the money. "Thank you for helping me see clearly." These moments, these small victories where my painful experience prevented someone else's suffering, they'd become my purpose. The connections I'd maintained and severed. My phone vibrated as I departed from the Riverbank area. A text message from Megan Cross appeared on the screen. "Noah asked me this morning if the Cookie Man would visit again. He misses you tremendously." A smile formed involuntarily. Megan and I had preserved our connection. She'd initiated divorce proceedings against Ryan immediately following his sentencing and relocated to her parents' residence in Vancouver with Noah. We'd arranged coffee meetings twice, once during January, once during June. Both occasions I'd brought assorted cookies for Noah, who'd retained memory of me as the nice man with the cookies from that terrible night when everything unraveled. Last month, I'd anonymously arranged delivery of a $500 gift card to Megan's address, accompanied by a note stating, "For Noah's future educational needs, from a friend who cares." She'd transmitted a text message immediately somehow, intuiting my identity as the sender. I neither confirmed nor denied responsibility. Certain acts of kindness produce greater impact when performed anonymously. I composed a response, "Tell him the Cookie Man sends his warmest greetings. Perhaps we can arrange a meeting for hot chocolate soon." 3 months ago, Betty had composed a letter to me, a brief, carefully worded correspondence expressing regret and requesting whether we might have a conversation. I hadn't formulated a response yet. I remained uncertain whether I ever would. Doctor Carver had explicitly stated that refusing to forgive everyone was acceptable, that establishing boundaries even during the healing process was healthy and necessary. Betty had performed her role in the betrayal, regardless of whether she'd been manipulated by others. I wasn't prepared to cross that bridge presently. Perhaps I never would be. Charlotte's letters arrived with monthly consistency, maintaining perfect regularity. I hadn't opened a single envelope. They occupied space in a shoebox positioned in my closet, unopened and unread. Benjamin had inquired once whether I planned to visit her or respond to her correspondence. I had answered with complete honesty. Not yet, maybe never, I genuinely don't know. Dr. Carver had affirmed that response was perfectly acceptable. The shoebox currently contained 12 unopened letters. Sometimes late at night, I'd stand before my closet hand, hovering near the shoebox, contemplating whether to read them. But each time I'd withdraw my hand and close the closet door. I wasn't ready. Perhaps I never would be. One evening at the support group, Patricia had shared her own experience with her estranged son. I read his letters for 2 years, every apology, every excuse, every promise to change. Then I realized reading them was keeping me trapped, so I stopped. I don't read them anymore. They go straight into a drawer. Maybe someday I'll read them. Maybe I'll burn them unread. Either way is okay. Her words had resonated deeply. There was no correct approach to this, no prescribed timeline for forgiveness or reconciliation. Each person's journey was uniquely their own. The final therapeutic session. Yesterday marked my final scheduled therapy appointment with Dr. Carver. We'd convened twice weekly for 8 consecutive months, then transitioned to once weekly for the subsequent 4 months. She'd provided guidance through the worst manifestations of trauma, the consuming rage, the misplaced guilt, the profound grief. "Do you remember the first day you entered this office?" She'd inquired yesterday, her warm eyes studying me with careful attention. I nodded affirmatively. I could barely maintain stillness. I kept anticipating the next betrayal, the next attack. I believed everyone was lying to me constantly. And now, how do you feel now? Now. I paused, searching for precise language. Now I wake up each morning, and the first thought entering my consciousness isn't whether someone is attempting to harm me. That represents progress. Dr. Carver's smile conveyed genuine warmth. That's enormous progress, Stellan. Healing isn't about forgetting what occurred or pretending it didn't happen. It's about learning to live again, despite what happened. You're accomplishing that. She leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming more serious. I want you to understand something important. You'll still have difficult days. Anniversaries, birthdays, holidays. They can trigger unexpected emotions. That's completely normal. But you now possess tools to manage those moments. You understand you're not alone. You recognize that healing isn't linear. What if I need to come back, I'd asked. Then you come back. My door is always open to you, Stellan. But I don't think you'll need to. You've done the hard work. You've faced your pain honestly. You've chosen to rebuild rather than remain bitter. That takes extraordinary courage. I'd departed her office, experiencing a lightness I hadn't felt in months. The weight I'd been carrying not gone entirely, but significantly diminished. The voice memo I recorded. This morning, following my run's completion, I'd seated myself on a bench overlooking the river and recorded a voice memo on my phone. Not intended for anyone else, just for personal documentation. And perhaps for others experiencing similar trauma, if I ever discovered the courage to share it publicly. I pressed the record button and spoke. October, 1 year later from the day that changed everything. My name is Stellan Turner. 365 days ago, my wife and daughter systematically stole over $400,000 from my accounts. My daughter attempted to poison me with sedatives. They conspired with a con man to take everything I'd built: my money, my trust, my sense of safety, and very nearly my life itself. I survived. I'm still here. I want you to know, if you're currently going through something similar, if someone you love has betrayed your trust, stolen from you, attempted to destroy you, you can survive too. You will survive. I'm living proof. Healing isn't linear. That's something they tell you in therapy, but you don't really understand it until you're living it. Some days are significantly harder than others. Some mornings you'll wake up and forget for a brief moment what happened. Then you'll remember, and the weight will crash down again, like you're experiencing it for the first time. That's okay. That's part of the process. Don't judge yourself for those moments. I'm not telling you to forgive. Forgiveness is intensely personal. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what they did or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about choosing your own peace over their continued hold on you. It's about releasing the poison they left inside you so it doesn't continue destroying you from within. I've forgiven some people involved in my betrayal. Others I haven't forgiven. Maybe I never will, and that's okay too. There's no rulebook for this, no timeline you must follow. Your healing belongs to you alone. What matters most is this: I'm still here. I'm still standing upright. I'm teaching classes, mentoring young people, helping others navigate financial dangers. I'm learning to trust again carefully, cautiously, with appropriate boundaries, but genuinely. You can do this. You can rebuild your life. It won't look the same as before, it can't, but it can be good. It can even be beautiful in ways you can't imagine right now. The future I'm building doesn't include a big house or a picture-perfect family. It includes purpose, connection, authenticity, helping others. Those things are more valuable than anything I lost. This is my story. Maybe one day I'll share it publicly. Maybe it will help someone else find their way out of the darkness I've been navigating. For now, I'm choosing to live. I'm choosing hope over bitterness. I'm choosing to believe that, despite everything, despite the betrayal, the lies, the attempts on my life, there is still good in this world, and I can be part of that good. My name is Stellan Turner. I'm 57 years old, and today, right now, I'm okay, more than okay. I'm genuinely at peace. I saved the recording and assigned it a title, My Story, October, 1 year later. Perhaps someday I'd share it at a support group meeting. Perhaps it would help someone else realize they could survive their own family betrayal. The morning continued. I walked into my favorite coffee shop near the Pearl District apartment. The barista, a young woman named Sophie, who'd been working there for 6 months, greeted me with a warm, familiar smile. "The usual order, Mr. Turner. Just Stellan, please," I corrected gently, returning her smile. "And yes, please, the usual." As she prepared my coffee with practiced efficiency, I noticed an older gentleman seated at a corner table, fumbling with his smartphone and displaying obvious frustration. Without conscious deliberation, I approached his table. "Need a hand with that?" He looked up, initially surprised by the interruption, then visibly grateful. "I'm trying to set up mobile banking on this device, but I can't figure out this application. My grandson says I need it, but the technology confuses me." I pulled up a chair and settled in. "Let me show you the process step by step. And here's an important tip: always enable two-factor authentication. It'll protect you from various forms of fraud, including identity theft." 20 minutes later, he had everything properly configured and secured. He thanked me profusely, offering to purchase my coffee as compensation. I declined politely with a gentle wave. "Then just pass it forward," I said. "Help someone else when you have the opportunity." As I stood to leave, he grasped my hand firmly. "You're a good person. The world needs more people like you." Those words settled into my chest with unexpected warmth. Sophie handed me my coffee with a note scribbled on the cup in her distinctive handwriting. "You're a good person. Don't forget that. S." I looked up at her, genuinely surprised by the gesture. She simply winked and moved on to serve the next customer in line. I walked out into the October morning, coffee in hand, and paused to observe my surroundings. The leaves were falling in their annual ritual. The river sparkled in the distance, reflecting sunlight. Joggers and cyclists passed by on the path, living their lives, pursuing their individual versions of happiness. For the first time in 12 months, I felt it real, authentic happiness. Not the fragile hope I desperately clung to during the early months of recovery, but something deeper, something earned through pain and perseverance and conscious choice. The realizations. I didn't know what the future held in store. I didn't know if I'd ever fully trust another person with complete abandon, if I'd ever rebuild any semblance of family, if I'd ever stop carrying the psychological scars of betrayal. But I knew this with absolute certainty: I was still here. I was still fighting for my life and happiness. I was still choosing to believe in fundamental goodness, even after everything that had been done to me. And that was enough. That was more than enough. Walking back toward my apartment, I reflected on the journey. 12 months ago, I'd stood in my in-laws' doorway with flowers in hand, watching my entire world collapse. I'd discovered my wife's betrayal, my daughter's conspiracy, the systematic theft that had been occurring for years. That version of Stellan Turner, the man who'd trusted blindly, who'd believed his family was perfect, who'd measured success in bank account balances, that man was gone. He'd died that day in Salem. But a new Stellan Turner had emerged from the ashes. A man who understood that trust must be earned, not assumed. A man who measured success in positive impact rather than material accumulation. A man who'd chosen healing over bitterness, purpose over resentment. I passed a small park where a father was teaching his young daughter to ride a bicycle. She wobbled, scraped her knee. She cried. He comforted her, cleaned the wound, encouraged her to try again. She climbed back on the bike, determination replacing tears. That's healing, I thought. Falling, getting hurt, but choosing to try again anyway. The unexpected encounter. As I approached my apartment building, I noticed a young woman sitting on the front steps crying quietly into her phone. She looked to be in her late 20s, professionally dressed, clearly in distress. I hesitated. The old Stellan might have walked past, not wanting to intrude. The new Stellan made a different choice. "Excuse me, are you okay? Do you need help?" She looked up, wiping tears with her sleeve. "I'm sorry, I'm fine, just family stuff." I nodded with understanding. "Family stuff can be the hardest kind." She laughed bitterly. "That's an understatement. My brother just called. He's been stealing money from our mother's accounts. She has dementia, and he's been taking advantage. I don't know what to do." I sat down on the steps beside her, maintaining respectful distance. "Report him, immediately, to the police and to Adult Protective Services. I know it's hard, he's family, but your mother needs protection." "But he's my brother." "And your mother is your mother. She can't protect herself. You have to do it for her." She studied my face carefully. "You sound like you've been through something similar." "I have, and I wish someone had given me that advice earlier. Don't wait. Don't hope it gets better. Act now." She nodded slowly, fresh determination replacing the tears. "You're right, thank you." She stood squaring her shoulders and made a phone call as she walked toward the parking lot. I heard her say, "Police department, I need to report financial elder abuse." I smiled. Another person helped. Another tragedy potentially prevented. The evening reflection. That evening I sat on my apartment balcony watching the sun set over Portland. The city lights began twinkling to life. Somewhere out there, Charlotte sat in a prison cell. Betty lived with her sister, probably wrestling with her own regrets. Ryan served his sentence, his double life exposed and destroyed. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering, no vindictive pleasure, just neutrality. They'd made choices, they faced consequences. That chapter was closed. My phone buzzed. A text from one of my Saturday mentees, a young woman named Jessica, got the promotion. "Your advice about negotiating salary worked. Thank you so much." I typed back, "Congratulations, you earned it through your hard work. Proud of you." Another text arrived this time from Patricia from the support group. 2 years sober from my family's toxicity today. Thank you for being part of my journey." I responded, "So proud of you. That's real strength." These connections built on authenticity, mutual support, shared understanding. They were my family now. Not bound by blood, but by choice, by showing up, by caring genuinely. The final thought. As darkness settled completely over the city, I returned inside and stood before my bathroom mirror. The face looking back at me had aged, new lines around the eyes, some gray in the hair that hadn't been there a year ago. But the eyes themselves looked different, clearer, more present, more alive. "You survived," I told my reflection. "You did the impossible. You rebuilt." I took a sip of my coffee and smiled at the words Sophie had written on the cup. "You're a good person." Maybe I was. Maybe despite everything, despite the betrayal, the theft, the attempted murder, the destruction of everything I'd believed in, I'd managed to remain fundamentally good. Or, perhaps more accurately, I'd chosen to become good again. To not let the evil done to me transform me into something bitter and twisted. That choice renewed daily, sometimes hourly, that was my victory. The morning sun had warmed my face during that riverside moment. The evening sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. It had been a beautiful day. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own opportunities. But tonight, I was at peace. My name is Stellan Turner. I survived, and I'm still here, still fighting, still choosing hope. That's my story, and it's enough. To everyone who has followed this journey from beginning to end, I need to share what I've learned through the most painful experience of my 57 years on this earth. I believed I understood my family completely. I believed 24 years of marriage and raising a daughter created an unbreakable bond. I believed trust was something automatically earned through time, invested through sacrifices, made through love, given freely. I believed that the years we spent together, the vacations, the holiday dinners, the quiet evenings at home, somehow guaranteed loyalty. I was mistaken about all of it. Looking back now with clarity I didn't possess before I recognized that God granted me eyes to see, but I consciously chose blindness. God provided me with wisdom through subtle warning signs, the unexplained anxiety, the unusual behaviors, the financial inconsistencies, but I deliberately ignored every signal. When my brakes failed on Interstate 5, and somehow I survived, when the sedatives dissolved and my coffee should have ended my life, but didn't, God was offering me another chance. Finally, desperately, I started listening. This experience with family betrayal taught me lessons I pray you'll never need to learn firsthand. Don't follow my path. Don't wait until you've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars and nearly your existence to recognize what's happening around you. Don't confuse genuine love with willing blindness. Don't mistake loyalty for foolishness or dedication for vulnerability. The most painful aspect of family betrayal isn't the financial loss, though. That certainly hurts. It's the fundamental destruction of your understanding of reality. When the people who should protect you become the people you need, protection from your entire worldview shatters. You question every memory, every conversation, every moment you thought was genuine. That's the real cost of family betrayal that nobody discusses. I think about Walter and Mildred, often my former in-laws, who unknowingly became the catalyst for uncovering the deception. Walter used to share Grandpa's stories with me during family gatherings, tales about the Depression era, when neighbors would steal from neighbors out of desperation. He'd always conclude these Grandpa stories with the same message: "Stellan hard times reveal true character. Prosperity can hide a multitude of sins, but crisis exposes everything." I didn't fully comprehend the wisdom in those Grandpa stories until I lived through my own crisis. Walter was teaching me something essential about human nature, that comfort and security can mask intentions. But when pressure increases, authentic character emerges. His stories were preparing me for a lesson I never imagined I'd need regarding my own family. Here's my honest perspective. After 12 months of therapy, reflection, and rebuilding, family betrayal doesn't happen suddenly. It develops gradually through small compromises, through justifications, through incremental boundary violations. Charlotte didn't wake up one morning deciding to poison me. She made a series of choices, taking small amounts, first then larger sums, then crossing into dangerous territory. Each step probably felt justified to her in the moment. Betty's involvement likely followed a similar pattern. She probably told herself she was protecting our daughter, that the ends justified the means, that I wouldn't really be harmed. These aren't excuses, they're explanations for how ordinary people become capable of extraordinary betrayal. What I'm suggesting is this family betrayal often involves good people making progressively worse decisions until they've traveled so far down that path they can't see the way back. So here's my advice earned through devastating personal cost. Don't be like me. Don't assume that time together equals trustworthiness. Don't believe that family relationships exist outside the need for accountability. Check your financial accounts regularly, weekly, not monthly. Notice behavioral changes in people close to you. When someone becomes unusually interested in your finances, pay attention. When your spouse suddenly wants access to accounts they've never cared about before, ask questions. When explanations don't quite align with observable facts, investigate further. Trust your family, certainly, but verify everything. Love doesn't require blind faith. Genuine love can coexist with appropriate boundaries and reasonable oversight. Protecting yourself doesn't mean you don't care about them. It means you're being responsible with what you've worked to build. And when God places warning signs directly in your path, those moments when something feels wrong, even though you can't articulate why, have the courage to investigate. That instinct exists for a reason. Honor it. What I pursued wasn't primarily about anger, though I certainly felt that emotion intensely. It was about refusing to accept victimhood as my permanent identity. It was about standing up and declaring, "This ends now." Some might call it revenge, but I consider it necessary justice, establishing consequences for actions, creating accountability where none existed. However, here's the critical understanding I want to share. Justice doesn't heal you. Watching people get sentenced doesn't repair the damaged trust. Seeing them led away in handcuffs doesn't restore what was stolen. Justice simply closes one chapter definitively, so you can finally begin writing the next one. That's its purpose, not healing, but closure that permits healing to commence. I'm sharing my experience publicly because if even one person recognizes warning signs in their own situation and takes action before reaching the crisis point I reached, then my suffering will have served a greater purpose. If one elderly parent protects their accounts because they heard my story, if one spouse asks necessary questions because they remembered what happened to me, then these painful 12 months will have created meaning beyond my personal journey. Now, I want to hear from you because these conversations matter. Have you experienced family betrayal in any form, financial, emotional, or otherwise? How did you navigate that difficult situation? What helped you move forward? Your perspective could help someone else who's currently struggling with similar circumstances. Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments section below. I genuinely read every single response and often reply personally. Your story matters, and this community we're building through shared experience provides support that helps all of us heal. If this account resonated with your own experiences or provided valuable insights, I'd greatly appreciate you clicking that subscribe button and sharing this content with someone who might benefit from hearing it. Your support enables me to continue creating and sharing these difficult but vitally important conversations. Thank you sincerely for investing your time and attention through this entire journey. Staying until the end demonstrates a level of engagement that means more to me than I can adequately express. Before you move on to other content, please understand that upcoming stories may contain fictionalized elements constructed specifically for educational purposes. If this type of content doesn't align with your preferences, I encourage you to explore other videos that better match what you're seeking. Take care of yourself, and perhaps most importantly, take care of your financial security. This is Stellan Turner signing off.